Welcome, everyone. Hello, everybody that's made it in the building. Of course, first and foremost, hey, Kenny. And also, thanks for the Cash App. Starting to show off. So supportive, like always. Welcome, Kizzies. Thank you for coming in. So, today, what we're going to be talking about is trauma of Black people. So, I think that a lot of times we forget that we've been through something as a culture, as a people. I feel like we need to be a little bit more understanding, but within reason. And then also, those of us who are experiencing symptoms have a duty to not exaggerate them, just for a secondary gain or what have you. And so today I'm going to be discussing why this is a bad idea, what we should do instead, and how to recognize it. Oh, hey, Entanglement L, welcome. So I guess we'll start off with a musical selection that I feel like this song just kind of discusses how he was able to overcome Black trauma. Oh, it satisfies by some of my ratchet qualities too. So, enjoy.
A nigga barely read the scripture, but I'm spiritual. Let's go. Seven bigger niggas, like you got a spirit. Okay. On the lights, if you see roaches in our series. What the fuck? Touch me now, we ain't the same. I still ain't feeling. Give a fuck about your feelings, pussy nigga. Shit, I got feelings too. Let's go. Nigga, we was broke. I broke you up. We had to steal our food. We cut like that. Steal from us, shit. We rob niggas too. First time I ever robbed the blood, nigga. I was stealing like 17. I take your gun, trade your shit, come back with a different tool. Yeah, I don't want that hoe. Ain't coming back, bitch. I got a different boot. That sound the same. My new shit drop, they heard me switch the groove. I don't play both sides. You ain't one of mine. I don't like to pick and choose. A nigga barely read the scripture, but I'm spiritual. Let's go. Seven bigger niggas, that you got is spirit. Okay. On the lights, if you see roaches in our series. What the fuck? Touch me now, we ain't the same. I still ain't feeling. Pop your shit. No, I ain't feeling these niggas. I'm dumb. Before I blew up, did my shows with a gun. Still can go city to city alone with my jewelry on. Say what you want, just be like a yeah, damn, he done got bullets. He got his hand and it ain't gonna get shook. Bitch say my name and I don't even look. A nigga barely read the scripture, but I'm spiritual. Let's go. Seven bigger niggas, that you got is spirit. Okay. On the lights, if you see roaches in our series. What the fuck? Touch me now, we ain't the same. I still ain't feeling, bitch.
Okay. So, guys, today what I wanted to start off with talking about is what is trauma, right? So, trauma is any event or any injury that has a lasting negative impact. So, that can be specific to each individual person. What's traumatic to one person may not be traumatic to others. Well, as a culture, we've all experienced, passed down through generational trauma. We've heard the stories. We were raised and required and had reinforced in us certain behaviors and reactions. Welcome, Duke. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for dropping by. So when we think about that, I want you guys to get familiar with a concept called the collective unconscious. It's what we all share. It's all what's in the back of our minds, things that we've all heard, things that we've all been told repeatedly, things that we're all required to respond to and in a certain way. Now, as Black people, there are some of us who have decided to use this information and to, I guess you guys see the title of the live stream today. Is it really Black trauma, or are some people just BSing? Some people are using this information to justify some of the negative things that they do. Some people are using this information to justify not overcoming it. When you have a trauma, the key is not to wallow in it. The key is to use it as motivation to overcome it, to not let it beat you. One of the goals of life is making it through to the end with minimal negativity, making it through to the end and becoming self actualized. Self actualized is where you have developed a quality of life and you are able to bring that into fruition. This only happens if all of your other levels of needs have been met. If there's any other lower level of need that is remaining unmet, you aren't able to work towards self actualization. Self actualization is also something that you're going to continue to strive towards as you age, as you get older. It's one of the goals that's always going to be in your mind. It's always going to be on your heart. It's never going away. You can change what self-actualization means to you, but until you achieve it, you won't fully be done striving. There are some people that have chosen to just give up. And so what that could look like is them doing undesirable behaviors, things that don't benefit themselves, others, or all of us as a whole in the collective. Welcome, Alyce. Thank you. Well, thanks so much, Brandon L. It's nice to see when my hater can give me a compliment too. Okay, so getting into it, there are some specific responses to trauma, right? I think we can all agree. Is there anybody here? Put it in the chat now or forever speak. Hold your peace. That will say that Black people have not been traumatized. I think that everyone on the planet can agree that Black people have in fact suffered a trauma. Are we the only ones who have? No. But we are the only ones that are continuously responding to it as if it's something that we are unable to overcome. We're the ones that it has the biggest current impact in, even though it's in our past. Not very far in our past, considering our total lifespan on the planet, but still far enough in the past to where we can make a difference. So if you can imagine in your mind anybody right now that is hell-bent and insistent, they are stuck on doing negative actions, things that harm themselves, others, and us as a collective, there is a possibility that they might be responding to some of these symptoms. So now the first symptom I wanted to discuss was called re-experiencing. That is when a person constantly still feels as if the trauma is happening to them at this moment, right? Stop acting like that, Brandon. You did a good thing and it's okay, right? You just let it happen. So re-experiencing would be in the form of nightmares or flashbacks. These are the most common ways to understand what re-experiencing is. Basically, the trauma keeps happening even if it's not actually being done anymore. Hypervigilence. This is something that we're being taught to normalize as a culture. It is always being on pins and needles, looking over your shoulder, never quite able to achieve relaxation. This is a person that is always responding to something, even when it's very minuscule. They are constantly watching and scanning, and they never feel secure. Avoidance. These this is a symptom that means there is something that you are putting a block between you and that thing. The fear is keeping you from being able to challenge it, to face it. It's something that a subject that you won't talk about, a place you just will not go. And for when it's coming from trauma, it is something that is a response that's out of your control. There's also numbing. I'm sure that we all have one person that we know that doesn't really seem to feel or experience emotions like the rest of us. In our culture, we have a tendency to big this up, to make this a desired quality. It actually is a person that has been so harmed that they are out of touch with their emotional responses. It's not a good thing. It means this person is waking up every day going through the emotions. They're not experiencing, they're not feeling life, they're not living. They do what is expected of them. Everything when you interact with them is probably going to feel quite shallow. Another form of numbing is disassociation. That's where you are separating yourself from something in your current reality that is causing negative emotions. I don't like to use the word negative. It's causing unpleasant emotions, emotions that you don't seem to be enjoying. That's when we think about anger, sadness, nervousness, anxiety. So this would be a person who might be sitting in the room with you, but then if you play a certain song, their mind and their spirit, all of the intangible aspects of their existence are being transported to a place that is safer, a place where that song is not being played. That's something that we need to be on the lookout, because that is one of the warning signs that a person has been traumatized in some form or fashion. Another symptom would be physical and emotional dysregulation. So dysregulation itself is when you are losing control. You are not the person that is in control of your emotions or your reactions, your responses. Things are outside of you. You're responding to whatever the trigger is. You can be hyper reactive, which means that you are, you would be, people would be able to see it outside. You're showing it outwardly. This is a person that might be running around the room, a person that might be pacing, a person that we can see what their meltdown looks like. And then hyporeactive, meaning this is a person that shut down, that freezes. These are very dangerous states for us to be in, because then you aren't able to save yourself from any actual threat. You also aren't able to experience any happiness and peace. Rest and rewards are an actual need in our existence. And if you can't experience what they are designed for, to help you progress, to help you keep going forward, there's definitely going to be additional damage that comes after it. So, with that being said, I thought today I would have a discussion regarding what we need to do about that. So, I was on a panel yesterday with my fourth quarter brethren. And so we were discussing some things that have happened to Black people at the hands of other Black people. My goal here is not to tell people that you have to put up with someone else's undesirable behaviors. But the hope is that if you understand where it comes from, you can attack the real perpetrator. You can get to the core of it to stop that from happening. You can't really solve trauma in individuals that are already born until you can stop whatever the event is that's traumatizing people. Because once you heal one person, you'll have 10 more that are now traumatized. For instance, if we are in the middle of a war, right? If you rescue 2 people and you get them to safety and you help them heal and relax, meanwhile, when you get back, you'll have 100 people maybe that have been traumatized since you left. I say all of this to say, because every day Black people are watching on television vicarious traumatic situations. You might not have been the person that was on the tape being harmed, but there is a sense of us being collected, whether you want to accept it or not. That means that you can see yourself in that person's shoes in some form or fashion. There are a couple typical reactions. The first reaction would be to try to find something to separate yourself from that person. It's the easiest one to do. Now, let's say you are a person who has so many characteristics in common with this person that is now being harmed for all of public viewing. It might be harder for you to separate yourself from that person. Therefore, you have to do more work to achieve safety. That doesn't actually solve the problem. The problem that we would need to focus on would be stopping the initial action that's causing the trauma. So, in a few minutes, I'm going to play another intermediate song and see if anybody would like to come up and discuss something that they have experienced in terms of Black trauma. And then another thing that I think we need to focus on is the response that you get from the people around you. One of the things that we do as a culture, we normalize the trauma. We tell everyone that it's okay. If you've had someone or tell you that you shouldn't cry when something sad is happening, that technically is them normalizing a traumatic event. A sad thing occurred. To tell you that you should get over it is the wrong advice. To tell you that it's not that big a deal, while it may be helpful in the short run, what they're not allowing you time to do is to experience that emotion so that you know what it's like, because all of our emotions are useful. They exist for a certain reason. And they also are not allowing you to express it, which means you keep it bottled up. Emotions do not just dissipate on their own. They grow, they build, they fester. And that's when you have people that blow up. What I've noticed in our culture is not only do we normalize, but we revere a blow up. That is not helpful to us as a people. There's a lot of tension in our community. And that's one of the places where it comes from. You never know what someone is going to do, where there should be certain actions, certain events that we all experience. There should be an expected reaction. We never know what people's reaction is going to be. So to walk around all day like that, right? To walk around and never know what you're going to get, that is a form of just internalized anxiety. It's not helpful. So meanwhile, let me just check into the chat and speak to some people that I didn't get a chance to speak to while everybody's in here. Let's see who all joined us for this talk. Oh, six figures. Welcome. Welcome, Rich Sis. Soon to be 16 figures. Wait, Water Sniper? Where did he go? So yes, you're right, Alyce. Trauma-informed focused care is big in the mental and behavioral health right now. Why do you guys think that is? Instead of stopping what is causing trauma in the lives of your individual citizens, it's more money in treating it after the fact. Basically, people that are in charge, the authority figures in the country, pretty much get to do whatever they want. But if it harms you, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to make an effort to not repeat it. But I will finance the care for you to be okay with me living my best life. Let's see. Who else came into the building? Oh, hey, Uncle Shug, welcome. I think you might have come over once before. Not really sure, but welcome. Oh, George Macon, welcome. I hope you find this topic helpful. We're still supposed to do our series. I haven't forgotten. I'm just getting back in the swing of live streaming. I have some pre-recorded uploads that I need to actually crank out. So I got to get back on my job over here. Oh, Big Duke 24 in the building. I would be very honored if Big Duke would come up because I didn't get a chance to add to, a testimony that he gave us yesterday on fourth quarter talk. And I would like to be able to go more in depth for that if he has time. Let's see. Yes, if something is important enough, someone will tell you. That's true. But we have to hope that what they're telling you is accurate. See, this is the problem with a whole culture of people being traumatized, right? What happens is what they tell you might not be as accurate as it should be. Okay, let's see. Who else? Well, yeah, definitely hit the Cash App. I mean, support is always appreciated. I'm not just, I'm not requiring it, but it would definitely be seen as supportive. Oh, American Negro, I've seen you around, but for some reason I feel like that's not the name I know the most of. Hey, Aries Queen, welcome, welcome. Let's see. Well, thanks, Big Duke. I hope so. Thank you, Uncle Shug. I hope this is helpful. So this is the thing. This information, if you guys have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I am meaning this to be helpful, not just for me, not just for the people in the chat, but anybody you encounter as well. Kind of like spreading positivity. It starts with one domino, and then you just have a domino effect from there. Okay, couple more points that I wanted to get to before I open up the chat. Some of the things that we can do as a culture to make sure that we're not compounding the problem, right? If we ever hope as a people, because before we can do any of these other, tasks and goals that we seem to all have in common that we want, we have to first cure and heal ourselves. What happens if we do gain authority, if we do gain autonomy? We're going to quickly lose it if we don't know what we're doing. If we're not healed, if we're not okay, we're not going to be able to maintain it. So it's worse to get something and then lose it than it is to never have had it. You could daydream all day about what it would have been like, but once you experience it and then it's gone because you didn't do what was necessary to properly secure it. I do plan on at some point doing a live stream regarding qualities of leadership that we would need in order to be able to maintain it. Every society that's risen to leadership has fallen for some reason or another. But there are things we can do to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that have already been put out there. If we're going to make mistakes, at least let it be different mistakes, things that have not been encountered before. So 3 things that we need to focus on, right? 1, don't add to the trauma of yourself or others. Why is this a bad thing? Because it prevents peace and recovery. How do we add to the trauma of ourselves? By normalizing it, by accepting it, by constantly expecting it, by never dreaming that anything can be different, by never doing anything that shows that you don't approve of what's happening, that you know is a damage. Having knowledge, having drive, having the will to fight against it, right? Don't add to the trauma of others. How do we do that? Well, when I'm having a miserable day, I go out and I look for somebody beneath me to step on so that I'm reminded that I'm not at least at the bottom. It's very selfish. And then what do? You create an enemy, you create more tension in the culture, and then you somehow contribute to your future damnation. This person isn't going to stay subjugated for very long. So they're going to rise up and fight back at some point. You might even expect it. You might initially be able to fight it off. But then while you're so busy doing that, you took your eyes off the real prize in your life, and somebody else can come in and harm you that way. So adding to the trauma, it's bad enough that we already have experienced negative events as a culture together, even in our daily and our personal lives. Some of the things that we experience, first of all, there's actual aggression, where people actively harm you, where they actively do things against you, designed for you to experience some type of detriment. So let me see. Ah, what an honor. Hey, Cookie, welcome. I bet you can chime in on this topic. Cookie does personality content. So, if you guys can, I'm getting ready to give Cluster a rent so she can drop her channel in the link as needed. If you can, go over there, make sure you support Cookie, right? And all right, check now, Cookie. Let's see who else came in here. Oh, hey there, Ward. What's going on? Welcome, Cassandra. Welcome. Let's see. Okay. I think I got everybody. If not, I definitely will as we keep going, right? So, adding to the trauma of others, bad idea, right? So, the ways that we do that, 1, aggression, outright aggression, when someone is actively causing you harm and detriment. There is passive aggression, where they're causing you harm and detriment, but they're making it appear as though they aren't and that they would never do so. It is so much more compounded than aggression. Most people can understand aggression. Passive aggression takes a little bit more mental effort, and thereby it drains more of your resources and the resources of the person doing it. And then finally, we have microaggressions. These are the things that are seen as, they can be explained away easily as accidents. They can be explained away easily as just differences, personal differences. These are the things that you're told to ignore, to get over. But that's all well and fine. The problem with microaggressions is people don't change them, and then they do so many of them, and then they all build up like the straw that broke the camel's back. It's all well and fine up to a certain point. But once you tip the scale, it's just as if you were outright aggressive. So with that being said, let's move on to the next point. One thing that we should know with this information is don't overuse it as an excuse. Don't wallow in the damage. Why should we not do that? Well, because it dilutes progress and reality. If you're wallowing in the damage, that means you're not even attempting anymore. You're not trying. You're not making any effort to escape it. It's becoming your new reality. Now your reality is distorted. How many clear-headed decisions are you going to be able to make if your reality is clouded with negativity? When will you ever be able to see the damage coming? When will you ever be able to plan for it? When will you ever have a different reality? It would be you just staying stuck there. You're just sitting in quicksand. It dilutes progress. Even if other people around you are progressing, you're only as strong as the weakest link. So that means people have to pull you along, and now you're dead weight. Technically, you would be seen as being in the way. Finally, we have to realize that it's not normal and it's not helpful. When someone is aggressive towards you, when someone is causing you trauma, they're harming you. How exactly is that ever helpful? What doesn't kill you make you stronger? That's true. However, you can't sustain that for very long. You can't sustain a lot of events in that manner back to back repeatedly. It's not possible. You're either progressing or you're regressing. You can stay stagnant, but some force is going to come along and make you move one direction or the other. It's not very often that you get to just sit there. Give me 1 second. I got a thing that says it can't be played in the background. So what can't be? Are you guys able to see the screen? Is it just me? Okay, there we go. Okay, it's back. I guess when I was playing a song, I don't know. Sorry, I need some technical help. I'm gonna have to reach out to some of these black IT people that we have here on YouTube and see what all I'm supposed to get together. Yeah, it's not helpful. It is not. There are, you know why it's not helpful is because there are other ways to help someone progress. There are other ways to help someone grow and mature. It doesn't always have to be painful. We as a culture tell each other that tough love is the only way to handle any problems. What about just regular love? There are a lot of us that can't even experience that. We don't even know what that would be like. That's also why I'm not talking about other cultures. I don't know what their reasons are for why they have abuse, neglect, exploitation. I'm not sure. But what I do know in our culture, the reason we have that is because we're told that it builds character. I'm not concerned with the other cultures. I am concerned with the one to which I belong. And in that, when we're thinking about that, what that means is when we see abuse, we're supposed to speak out. We're not supposed to engage in it. We're not supposed to be okay with it. That was fine when we didn't know what the damage and the impact of abuse was. Now that we do, we have information. We know what happens when we do that to our children, when we do that to our elders, when we do that to our peers. Now we know what the impact is. We already have that coming from outside of the culture. Do we have to contribute to it too? It's not normal. In a typical developing society, it is not normal to have such negative interactions with one another. In our instincts, we are attracted to people that have things in common with us. So it is a damage for you to be able to see someone that looks like you, that has the same features as you, and to be able to attack them as if they are some separate being. The picture that I posted for the thumbnail, it has information in it. I don't know how many of you guys actually had to take these type of classes in biology, but we do have, the instinctual brain, the downstairs brain. That's what we're born with. As we mature, as we grow in development, it sprouts out to what we then are able to use in terms of our frontal lobe, our decision making, our rationality. It's what separates adults from children, or at least it's supposed to. When we are in a fight or flight situation, we depend on our instincts, but that is supposed to be only until we get out of that situation. If you never use your frontal lobe, it doesn't get exercised, it doesn't get to practice, and you lose functionality. So when you think about being mature, we have a lot of people in our culture that like to call themselves grown. But if you are truly grown, you would have much more frontal lobe activity. You'd be able to see more than one side. There is no damage in being able to understand another person's point of view. Whether or not you relate to it fully, you can at least understand it. We have a lot of negative terms that we call one another. Weak, flip-flopping, all of those things. It's us shaming one another for frontal lobe functionality. Does that sound like a typical development? It shouldn't. So it is not normal. the way we interact with one another. There is a better way. A lot of us are downtrodden, not happy, not willing to even try. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the panel for anybody that wants to join. If you have experience in negative interactions with the Black community, I want us to be able to talk about what a viable solution is. I want us to be able to hear the impact, like have it put out there what you're actually doing, because a lot of people are able to distance themselves from the impact of their actions. If you're able to do something harmful to another individual because they simply aren't you, you get to leave that interaction. But I like to think that if people knew what they were leaving behind, they would be able to understand the potential impact. If it does not hit you, it is possible that it could hit your children. But yet again, they aren't you, right? But that's another live stream. I'll deal with parenting later. So let's see what the chat is going through, or attempt to at least versus attack, because it's exactly. We need one of everything. Variety is the spice of life. If y'all, there is a form of torture to lock somebody in a room that's monotone, that only has one color in it, with no sound, no stimulation. That is some places that is used as torture. It's used to overstimulate you. So when you have an echo chamber, when you have a place where everybody agrees with every single thing you say, you don't grow anymore. You don't have to practice defending your position. Who said that we have to attack people that are different from us? In some place of life, like this is another thing that I've commonly said. One of the points of life is to find out how to coexist. We need one of everything. No one person can do every single thing. So we're going to have to be able to get along, or else we will perish. There are some stubborn people that are willing to go through that just so they can say that they were right. But what good does it do you or anyone else to be right in the middle of chaos? How does that help? So that would be an example of the immaturity that we need to overcome. And yes, if you have not subbed to the Fourth Quarter Talk, go ahead and do that. Take this time, hit the bell. Thanks so much for your support. I'm over there as well. That would be on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to try to make this a regular thing on Sundays at 6 or 6:30 p.m. Central. Okay, so now how do we know when a response to a traumatic event, because life is going to have traumatic events, right? How do we know when that response is the right response? How do we know if that's a normal response? Well, one, it would affect most of the survivors of the event. The reason for that is because we're all connected anyway. And certain events throughout our life period separate us, but also certain events bring us back. So when you have a shared great negative event, the way you respond to it is going to be much more likely related to your survival instinct, which we all share. So it stands to reason that a lot of the responses to that event are going to be similar. Second, if the response is socially acceptable, it means if you, a person that has not been affected by it, are able to understand where that response would come from. You could clearly see a line from that event to their response. Finally, if it's effective in life, it might be something that maybe this negative event, maybe this trauma changed everything, right? Going forward. Now, if your response to that is effective, it helps you to move forward in life, then that's what's supposed to happen. That would be a normal response. And so with that being said, I know I said a lot. I'm looking for questions, right? Yeah, okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. Please forgive me if I missed any, but you can definitely always type it back in the chat. You also could Cash App it. I'm just serious. Or you could just come up and go ahead and have that conversation with us, right? So give me 1 second. Let me put there we go. the link in the chat. And we're going to have a musical interlude and hopefully get into some groundbreaking information. This next song I chose because one, I'm a fan, and two, I feel like it describes how a lot of us are thinking, whether we want to agree with him or not. Okay, guys, let's welcome Big Duke 24 to the panel. Thanks, Big Duke. How
No
are you
problem, no
today?
problem. I'm good, love. How about yourself, man? I see you doing work here. Good topic,
I'm
good topic.
trying. I'm trying. I had a few clients earlier today, so I then decided that I might as well do a little bit of something on YouTube. I got some pre-uploaded, well, I mean some pre-recorded uploads that I got to do too. So, you know, I'm planning on getting back into the swing of things. So I'm glad that you're up here because on yesterday's panel with the fourth quarter talk, you gave us an amazing story, and I was wondering if you could hit the highlights once again, so that way anybody that's watching this will know, it's kind of what prompted this live stream is because I felt like we needed to go more into in depth.
Yeah, for me, man, it was just like I was
So
just
I'm
saying that
glad that you're up here because on
okay,
yesterday's panel.
got some
Wait, is that
feedback
me?
there.
Okay, hold on,
Yeah.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
Okay.
You there? Can you hear me?
She's muting her.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. You go ahead. I'm muting me
Oh,
because I'm trying to figure out where the feedback is coming from.
okay, cool. What's up, Chaos Rain? What's up?
What's good, man?
What's going on, love?
Is that the host in the fourth quarter? Is that you, bro?
Yeah, man. It's me, man. Big Duke in the building.
All right, the big dude. Good. What's good?
Anyway, though, I just want to say that, man.
Hello,
My
Coach.
experience, and you hit on a lot of topics, man, that really resonated with me. And what I didn't get to yesterday was that I had to get some therapy a little bit because of being shot 4 times, and I put up the picture of the dude who shot me. But I'm still not entitled. You know what I'm saying? So being shot with a 45 caliber handgun 2 times in the leg, 1 in the hip and 1 in the lower back, it really, really, really traumatized me a little bit. And you said something that was real prominent that I find myself now, even to date, like very, very, very aware of my surroundings. I'm always like looking left and right. You know what I'm saying? And this chick here, she called me out on it. She said that, have you ever had any type of nightmares or anything like that? I said, nah, I don't have any of that shit. But she said, I noticed something about you. You always looking left and right. And that's one thing that I took from that, that I'm very, very, very cautious of my surroundings. But, going through the process that, I didn't feel any pain, none of that good stuff, but it happened. And when it did happen, it really shook me. It shook me to my core and have faith in the Black community, man, because I didn't do anything to anybody. And for that to happen to me just on a whim, it hit me because I had a real, real, real promising, NBA career. Hopefully, I didn't go to the NBA, but I went overseas and played ball, had a successful run. But it did shake me up to my core a little bit because, it was in my community, Black community and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I would sit there and say it kind of affected me a little bit mentally.
Well, that's one of the things is that it's something like this is the thing. So what you mentioned, the symptom that you mentioned is called hypervigilance. It means overly looking at everything. There
Right.
is the belief sometimes when you suffer from a traumatic event that there was something you could have done, or even for some people when their symptoms are being compounded, like Cookie's question that she asked a few minutes ago, when your symptoms are being purposely compounded, there is the belief for you to internalize it. And what that comes from is the people around you feeling helpless. And so they have to tell you that it was something you should have done. So I'm not saying that that's what you were having. That is the extreme version of it. But in terms of what you were doing is hypervigilance, which means looking around because you felt like you could have prevented it and that you can prevent it going forward. But it's important for you to realize that you did not cause that, event to happen. That was the person's choice. That's what they decided was either necessary or appropriate to do at the time. You were living your life until this big, huge, crushing event happened, and then it impacted your future. The reason why sometimes it's hard to get through these things is because every choice in your life thereafter is peppered with the impact of that event. You literally, when you were going across seas to play ball, did it or did it not ever cross your mind that had that event not happened, you might have been able to play here closer to your loved ones?
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing when you said no, it was Brandon. He said that did I hate the guy? And I did. I would say hate it. I know hate is a very, very, very strong word. But at the same time, Topaz, it was one of them things where I knew, like I said, once they eval me and they pulled down my socks, you can't lie to him. And he asked me what happened, and I had to tell him what happened. Hey man, I've been shot 4 times and shit. And when that white man was like, oh, okay, all right, I knew it was a done deal. So I had to go an alternative route. But I did think about it when I was over there because I was like, man, this I could have been there. I could have been on the top pedestal. You know what I mean? At the height. I mean, been in NBA somewhere, and Chucky will tell you, even today, like when
Mm-hmm.
I work out, play ball, or whatever, my right leg it swells a little bit because it happened December 3rd, and I was on the basketball court in February of the following year. You know what I'm saying? And then to
Mm-hmm.
not have any feeling below my right knee, today I can't dwell on it. I can't touch it because it really messed me up mentally and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, you gonna have no feeling down there and shit. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
try not to even touch it like that. But yes, when I went overseas, it did have an effect on me, knowing that I could have been on front stage and which is the NBA.
Right. And so I'm just curious, what preceded him shooting you? Like, why did he feel like it was time to pull out a gun and aim it at you?
But well, you got to appreciate the visual. Like I ask anybody in the chat right now, or anybody on the panel, we had a stoplight, and I'm behind them. I'm behind the car, and the light turned green. And if the light turned green, and they don't go, then what you gonna do?
Right.
What's your next plan of action? If you behind the car and the light turned green and they don't go, what you gonna do?
You should stay there. I mean, you gotta honk your horn,
There
but
you go.
eventually you can't even
You said it.
move.
Nope, you said
Yeah.
it. Bump your horn. I bumped my horn. We both turned left. He pulled off. I pulled off to the side. He jammed on the brakes behind me, so I pulled to the side of him. And then I had my shades on top of my hat. And I turned and looked at him. And when I looked at him, my shades flew off my hat and they flew
Mm-hmm.
outside the window. So I opened up my door and went to go pick up my shades. And I looked up, and they say, he looked at me. I looked at him. He started shooting, bam, bam, 2 shots. You know what I mean? He hit my leg, and the only reason he shot me the other 2 times is because I'm looking at him like, yo, what the fuck you doing? And then when I
Right.
looked down, it looked like I had on mismatched shoes. One was red, one was brown. And when I turned to try to run, he shot me in the hip, and then he shot me in like the lower back. And then after that, I staggered and stumbled a little bit, and I just laid down on my own. And that's when he jumped in my vehicle and drove off. And and then they called him, but they didn't send the paramedics. The only thing that saved my life, it was a guy there coming out of Big Lots, and he had his med kit with him, and he started working on me. But they sent
Mm-hmm.
the zip up motherfuckers. They sent the. That's funny now,
Wow.
but
So they
when they
already was
came,
counting you out. See, but then
yeah,
now that's
yeah, when they
another thing.
came, right.
Most
Go ahead,
people would
go ahead.
feel like that's just something light, but no, it's still it's still something that says how they view us in our country in this country. You know, they're not even
Right,
gonna try to make life-saving attempts. It's like, oh well, this one already gone. You know, like that is it's disposable. That is so horrible.
right,
But I think
right.
a lot of this stuff needs to be brought to the forefront so we can get real, so we can really pay attention and come back to reality and see exactly what we're up against.
Facts, facts. So, like I said, I'm here now, man. I don't think about it to date. I'm still able to do everything that I mean, normally can do. It's just I don't have any feeling below my right knee. You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
everything in that, I'm still working out. I still can run, jog, cycle, do whatever I want to do, my normal activities. So,
Well,
yeah.
and it's important
Mhm.
for people to see that you didn't give up either. You might not
Correct.
be able to do any of those things had you just laid and wallowed in it. At some
Right.
point, whether you felt like it or not, you had to get up and at least try. You know,
Hmm.
you would regret even more if you just kind of gave up. But had you done so, we still need to place the blame on the person that caused this trauma.
Right.
This was a trauma, a thing that has a lasting negative impact in your life, but you have been able to overcome it. And so you still get to feel some semblance of the happiness, the actualized life that you can reach.
Oh, let me tell you this too, Topaz. Before laying in the bed, hospital bed for almost 2 months, they picking out what walking assistance I'm gonna use for the rest of my life.
Right.
They like a walker,
Hmm.
a cane, and all this. I'm like, what, man? I ain't using none of that shit. I had to use it for a month or two, but then after that, I started like, playing ball, and then they was mad and all, but it is what it is, man. I didn't let that stop me from doing what I wanted to do.
Right. Right. So this is the importance of instilling a dream in our children. They have something to come back to help assist in their recovery. And so Cookie asked the question earlier. Let me see if I can get back to it
Hmm.
where it shouldn't be that far ago. But it was a great comment that I feel, yeah, here we go. How should you handle re-traumatic events when the trauma is intentionally re-triggered? Well,
Damn.
one is to realize that it's being re-triggered, because see, that's the first thing is people have denial. We normalize things, right? So to realize, one, that you have been traumatized and that you do have triggers. I know it's a funny thing nowadays on the internet to, laugh when people have been triggered. People now, they get buzzwords out of psychology, and then it becomes a trend to say it. Everything for a while, like a couple of years ago, everything was, oh, you're triggered. I couldn't wait for that trend to die. I was so over it. So one is to realize that you've been traumatized and that you do now have trigger buttons. Two, when you realize that you're being constantly re-triggered, because see, some people might believe that that's a part of their new normal. They might believe that that's okay. You have to realize that this is a person that is doing something extra and an additional to what normal life would be like. You might be able to overcome the trauma if you weren't constantly being re-triggered. So then finally, the best thing to do would be to get completely away from that person, go no contact, because this is a sadistic individual who thinks it's funny to trigger people on purpose. And then, we have some people that don't know that it's sadistic, but that doesn't stop it from being a sadistic act. They may think that, oh, I'm just giving tough love, I'm just helping with exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is graduated and titrated. Stop trying to do therapeutic techniques just in your backyard, right? Like,
Good
just
point.
stop it. So first thing to do is get away from that person so that you can heal completely. I'm not saying you may never talk to that person again, but for the initial moment, it would be like if you got physically hurt. You're not going to just sit there in your family living room and let them keep poking at you with toothpicks and stuff. You're going to get
Right.
away from them and go to the hospital. And sometimes they're not going to be able to come visit you. Sometimes they're going to have to leave the room. Sometimes they're going to have to go home. So there's nothing wrong with you having a break away from, the irritant, because that's what it would be at this point, to
Right. Right.
heal your mental health, just like you would your physical health. So that's the first thing, is to get away from them. In the absence of that, you have to confront the individual. Now, you may need some support for that, but whatever you
Yeah.
need to gather together so that you can confront that individual, that is the next step. But at the end of the day, you are still going to have to take a break from that person so you can relax, calm down, and recover from the triggering event plus all the additional new re-triggers. So does
Yeah.
that
It's
answer
gonna
what
take
you're
a.
asking, Cluster?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It
Good. Go
does.
ahead.
It does. A piece to the chat room. Shout out to the chat room, to the Mod Squad. Hey Topaz. Hey Big Duke. Hey
Hey,
K
Cookie.
guys.
What's going on?
Um, the only issue with that is that and it's excellent advice, but when you're in a space where you
Mm-hmm.
don't, I think on social media is different because
Mm-hmm.
in under normal circumstances, like you gave the example of being with the family member that was doing something that was injurious to you or doing something to trigger you intentionally. The
Mm-hmm.
rule of thumb is to basically just go no contact. The problem is that on social media, if you encounter individuals that do that, it's a lot more difficult to be able to get away or to be able to put some distance between yourself because you have they have a platform or they have the
Mm-hmm.
ability to be able to whether it's antagonizing you from a platform, whether it's antagonizing you from a chat room, it's a little bit more difficult to get away from that because it's
Right.
like when I think about why I came to this platform in basically the self-help sector to bring um for those of you that are unfamiliar, I was married for 12 years to a malignant narcissist. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that's what he was. um Coming to the internet to try to basically look for answers as to why he was doing certain things, and I already had some understanding of what narcissism was. um but it wasn't until I actually found the narcissistic abuse on community on YouTube that I began to understand certain things. So as the separation took place, I decided that because so much dysfunction is normalized in the Black community, even in myself having grown up in a family of dysfunction, I know that it's normalized. So it was very
Mm-hmm.
difficult to find supports because if people are ignorant of what personality disorders are, it's very difficult to explain to them
that this is just not just a normal breakup,
Mm-hmm.
and that what you experience actually causes trauma to the brain. A
Yep.
prolonged emotional abuse um, is just as is traumatizing. So you have to go through a recovery process. So that's actually how I started, and I was also struggling with recovering as a codependent. So that's kind of like how I got caught up and how I ended up on the YouTube chitlin circuit. Defending, taking on that
Chitlins.
defending people that you believe are, and this is long before, this was like a year ago, defending
Mm-hmm.
somebody that I actually thought was a victim. And ultimately, it was another villain. So I understood at some point
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to do some more healing, because I was saying, okay, well, but now that I have all of this knowledge about narcissism, how is it that I wasn't able to see that? Well, that's because those core wounds were still there. There was still some
Right.
work I needed to do,
Right.
but it's taken that's why I show my previous videos, like my actual content, and I think people are flabbergasted, because it's almost like you look at two different people, or like I have split personalities, but that's actually me in a healed state, right?
Right.
Versus me not being healthy, or me being in, like you talked about, being trapped in survival mode. That's kind of
Right.
like what it's like, because like when I'm with my family of origin, that's what it feels like. You know,
Right.
um, I had a visit from my cousin yesterday, and I love him, but he's a pure sociopath, pure sociopath. And he talked about he didn't realize it was triggering for me, but he started talking about things that his dad did to him when he was little. And he talked about how but he was in a very joking kind of way. He was actually talking to my youngest son, but he was unaware, totally unaware of how what we went through shaped us as adults.
Right.
I was the sort of like the scapegoat and the black sheep of the family. Um, and he was talking about how when sometimes his dad would go out and cheat on my aunt, and that is actually my mother's sister, and how he would come home and beat on him because he's
Mm-hmm.
upset because of something that he did. And again, I don't think that is very important. I think I get very triggered when I see parents do things that could possibly um, the mistakes that I made with my children. One of the reasons why I'm so candid about those mistakes is because I got to see the effects of the decisions that I made based on the training that I had. I
Right.
raised them based within my capabilities at the time. Certain things I didn't know. I'm 47 years old. 47 years ago, or even 20 years ago, there were certain things that we just did what our family of origin taught us to do as far as parenting. I didn't realize until my 30s that the shit was dysfunctional, you
And
know?
this is what I want to say, Cookie, is that this is the thing with our culture, right? We started out here in dysfunction. And what I mean by that is when we were first brought over here, right?
Hmm.
There were people who still remembered what appropriate functioning families and culture looked like. Once they died off, there were several generations before we were liberated that operated and normalized and just wanted to survive the everyday threat that Black people faced here in America. So when we think about like how far we have to go back to reach a functional level of a culture, we would have to go all the way back through the trauma that we as a collective have suffered. That's hard to do. So my issue is getting people to understand that yes, we didn't know in the past. I understand that. I appreciate what our ancestors did do because them surviving means we get to be here. But we also have to realize that that was not enough. And that means not that don't respect them and appreciate what they did, but what it means is I still have work to do. In order for me to fully appreciate them surviving, I have to build on their purpose for surviving, which means to finally achieve a functioning society here. So we
Hmm.
didn't know in the past. what the impact would be, because people weren't talking about these things. Everything was staying, and what happened in the family stayed in the family. Everybody had this unrealistic view of the impact of their actions, and it was perpetuated by people not talking about it. You were led to believe, not you specifically, but we as a people were led to believe that everybody else was okay, and it was just us. It was just our family that was acting up. But the more social media happened, the more people were able to talk, the more people became more courageous. They found support, and they opened up about what we were all experiencing. And now we see that it's the impact of the collective. It's something that was done to all of us. And so now our duty after that is to make the changes, which is why I also get triggered when I see things that people do. If I know what's going to happen to that person as an adult, I know that certain behaviors have been proven, have been researched, have been studied, variables tested to lead to well-rounding, helpful, functional, happy, achieving, and actualized adults. And some things are not, and some things are the opposite. So what I'm saying is, you did the biggest step when, I know you mentioned before that you have apologized to your children. A lot of parents don't want to do that.
Yes.
So you told, when what that apology did for your children is let them know that they're supposed to choose something different, and it's okay, and you would support them in doing so because you're concerned with their progress.
Right.
There are some parents that won't apologize to their kids, and what that does is trap them in what happened to them, and it keeps them to believe that it was their fault. You have not done that to your children. And that is a
I'm gonna
good
say,
thing, and I want you to give yourself credit for doing that. Was that chaos?
nah, that was me. I'm gonna throw it to you,
Okay,
Chaos. I
hey,
just want to add this right here real quick. Going back to something
okay.
you said earlier, Topaz, you was like about the confronting part, like confront him. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
I know like right now, I'm not at that level. It for me, if I was to see him right now, it'll be almost like, yeah, niggas on now. I got your ass.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's been like almost 30 some, 40 some years. I mean, 30 some years. It's still that mind state is still like right there. It's still like fiery hot. You see
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? It's still not resolved. You know what I mean? Because when it happened, I was in the hospital, he was in jail, and then they say, I got well, and then I went on and played ball. So it never got
Mm-hmm.
resolved. So I don't have that, hey, let's talk this out, man. Hey, listen, I don't have that mindset right now. It's like, yeah, niggas on that, Jack. You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
glad you
So
said that, because that's
yeah,
what's going on, is that you didn't have time to resolve it. We get up and we move too fast. Yeah, you shouldn't wallow in it, but yeah, you should also
right,
process it so that you don't carry it with you. Also,
right,
I want you to give yourself credit too, because even though it's been 30 years, there's no time limit on trauma, especially when everything that you do now
facts,
is peppered with it, because you now have a different alternative that would not have happened had this guy not gotten road rage and decided to do something to harm you. you
facts,
know so
facts.
that is something that's going to take there. Sometimes there is complex trauma, it's compounded trauma, and it's by things like that. Every day that you get in a car, this is a subtle reminder, and what happens is you're exposed to it repeatedly. So then the goal of resolving trauma is to make your peace with it as being part of your past. You're never going to forget that it happened. You're never going to live a life where it didn't happen. You're just going to be able to make your peace with the fact that this has happened. That's the
Right,
best option. Because
cool,
anything more than that is either going to be delusional, and that's going to cause hurt and trauma, or either it's going to be unrealistic, and then you're going to have some setbacks trying to achieve something that's not possible. So, you've made your peace with the fact that that's part of your past. But
right.
sometimes, like, if you got to understand, Duke, that if part of your personality is when someone hurts you, you smack them, right? Like, that's just, I
Nah,
mean, that's not going anywhere. It's
nah,
not going
it ain't
anywhere.
that.
And maybe that's the consequence. Maybe that's the consequence of what happens when you shoot somebody and then you
Yeah.
just keep walking around like everything is okay. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, it ain't to that point. It's just for him. I mean, because like when you just going about your life and you living your life, and then what I mean, come across ways that what I mean, Big Duke, ain't gonna call my name, and shot up. What I mean, Mr. Basketball of Florida, all this stuff here, and I'm laid out, knowing I ain't do anything to you, and you took that away from me like that. Yeah, I got some. Yeah, I got something for you. You know what I'm saying? And that's just my thing is,
Right.
so yeah,
But I
so
mean, and the smacking people part was a little bit facetious. But what I'm
right,
saying
right.
is, like, you don't take things just lying down, you
Right,
know?
right, right.
So
Right.
that sometimes that's part of the consequence. Sometimes that's what stops the perpetrator is realizing that you don't get to choose how the person responds.
Right. Yeah.
So
You're
I
right.
don't want you to feel like you said that it's been 30 years. Okay, well, you know what? Sometimes we don't ever, make it to that point where it's cool. Sometimes we ain't supposed to make it to the point where, yeah, it's cool that he did this. We don't want a society where people just walk around shooting people because you mad because somebody honked their horn at you deservingly because you was
Hmm.
stopped at a red light. I mean, at a green light. They were
Right.
getting your attention so you could go. You was just going. So you would have rather the person not honk their horn so they could just sit there. Y'all all just sit there for the next light cycle. That's delusional. That's crazy.
Yeah, he meant to do that shit. Like I said, the governor called me up. The governor of Florida called me and said that, since he got the death sentence, that, when it's time that I can go down there and watch, watch him, what I mean, die. So I'm like, yeah, I come down there. Don't worry about it. Can I bring popcorn? I ain't gonna even
So
take no
Yep.
lunch out this motherfucker. I
Yeah.
pull the
Now
switch, nigga.
listen, this is the thing though. Like he got the death penalty because after he did that to you, I don't know whether he served justice or not, but he
Uh-uh.
ended up killing a child and doing something
Right.
else that was in that
That's how they
video
got it.
too.
Right. That's how they got him when he
Yeah.
killed the little boy. So when I showed the video yesterday, that's how they got him when he killed that little boy. You know what I'm saying? So that's how he ended up getting caught up with attempted murder on me, and then actually murder with the kid.
Right. So this is the thing. When these perpetrators are allowed to keep going like this, what are the chances that they're actually going to stop on their own?
well, they
Very
won't.
unlikely.
They,
And
I mean,
Cookies talked about
they,
that too.
they won't stop.
Right.
They won't stop until they are stopped.
Right.
Right.
And it's me and my oldest son were talking the other day, and the fact of the matter is, I think that I think it's I think that we have a community, we have communities, especially in urban areas, we have communities full of sociopaths. That I think I think psychopaths are rare, but I don't believe that narcissists and sociopaths are rare. I think
Right.
that our communities are flooded with them. It's not normal to shoot somebody and then go about your everyday business. And me and my son was talking about that the other day, about about different people. Without being too specific, we were just talking about the fact that a person could blow your brains out and then come back around or walk or see your family grieving, and know that they're responsible for it, and everybody is but at the same time everybody knows who did it, but nobody says anything.
Good
you
point.
And
know
that's something
um
crazy to require us as a culture to do is to sit around a cold blooded killer, not knowing whether or not it's going to be you next, being told that you're weak for having that natural thought, and then being required to hold on to the secret and not seek justice, the very thing that will relieve your anxiety. Do you
well
see what
they
I mean about the
well it
trauma?
is yeah, well it is you well the thing is that I think that's the reason why we do kill each other so much,
Right,
because you know that this person is a killer, so it's nothing to stop them from. All they need is a reason for you to
right,
be the
Hmm.
next victim. So you're either going to do one or two things. You know what I mean?
right.
And I think that perpetuates that cycle, and it's very difficult to disengage or disentangle yourself from that, especially if you don't know that that's dysfunction. Again, like
Yeah, and everybody around this guy is now hyper vigilant because
yeah,
if you end up getting shot, you now are also responsible for knowing but not telling that this is a murderer. So now you have to watch yourself because it would be your fault if you happen to have gotten shot by this person or gotten killed or stabbed by this person. We do the same thing with other types of abuse.
but I think that there's a penalty in society for doing the opposite. I mean, I think I look at it two different ways, Topaz. I think I look at civilians and law-abiding citizens differently than I do other
Hmm.
villains. I think there's like it's almost like an unwritten different code for people that fall into the villain category versus law-abiding citizens.
And
If a
that's called discernment. And see, that's the thing that other people don't practice at times. That's
Mhm.
the problem that I have is that if you are, going back and forth with somebody who's with it, who understands, who participates, who's capable, fine.
Mm,
because it's two people that agree to it. No harm, no foul. But and when that comes out to people who are not with it, people who have opted out and they
yeah,
aren't doing anything to anybody and you just bring them in, that is very different than somebody who is signing up for that life and they know what it comes with.
correct. Correct. It's
So
like they're two different. They have a right to, um, they have a. I mean, if you do something, if you fall into the villain or the career criminal or the criminal category, and you do something in front of a law-abiding citizen, if they tell on you, I mean, you can pretty much expect that. Why would
Hmm.
you do it in front of them? I think that
Right,
they
because
have a right
essentially
to
that
live.
is a form of trauma, having to witness criminal activity. When I do these assessments, that's one of the things that's considered an adverse childhood event. A child having to watch criminal activity all of the time, or very frequent. When you do that in front of somebody, you are now placing them in a position to have knowledge that they would have not otherwise looked for or accepted. So you're technically, it's a form of aggression towards them because you're placing something in their life that they didn't ask for, that they would have avoided had they been given the chance to. So why would you not expect them to go and get some help? They have not signed up for that life. They don't agree with it, and you fully know this before you do it.
And it also too, when you engage in criminal activity around children, it sends them the message that it's okay. They
Right,
they
because they're
come
still
that
learning.
becomes their norm. You know,
Right.
um, yeah. So it's like it's going back and tending to that unfinished business. That indeed is a process. And
Hmm.
for myself, I found that as I'm trying to work through those different traumas, it's almost like you constantly test it, um, to be pulled back into that dysfunction. But again, it's very easy to
Yep.
do because it feels normal.
Exactly.
Until my 30s, dysfunction was I did believe that dysfunction was normal. It wasn't until I started getting professional help that I realized that no, nothing about what my life had been up to that point was normal. You
Hmm.
know, and certain things that we don't even know is abusive, even if it's not physical, nonetheless, it's still abuse and it has an effect on the person that's experiencing it. So,
Right.
yes, absolutely, it was necessary. Now, when you talked about some parents not wanting to ever, I remember that same cousin I was talking about. I remember him fighting his father one day, and I remember me hearing about it, and everybody else in the family was acting like they were so appalled by what he did. Now,
Hmm.
in one sense, it is because that's his father, but to me, it was an attitude of indifference because I know what his father was like. I know what he was
Hmm.
like to my aunt. I know what he was like to my cousins, and I just felt like he got frustrated and he thought that the way that he had been able to treat him throughout his life, likewise his siblings and his mother, I think he forgot the fact that he was a grown man and he wasn't in that vulnerable position where he couldn't defend himself in every
That's
sense
what I
that
mean when I
he has
say
to
people are
try.
not going to stay subjugated for long. How you treat your children, remember that they're going to not only be adults, but at some point they're going to be responsible for your care and well being. It's the cycle of life.
Hmm. And I remember him telling me that my other cousin that he said I remember he said this just yesterday that he said cuz he gave his father a pass because he talked about how much better he was with cuz I've said the same thing about my mother, that my mother was a better grandmother than she was than she was a mother. And I don't think
Right,
people could understand that, but it was almost like a redemption for her because
right,
she was with my children in ways that me and my siblings had not experienced because I pretty much took on the role of the mother,
hmm,
and took care for the siblings. And because my cousins were experiencing the same thing, it was like before I actually had my own children, I was the mother to not just only my siblings, but my little cousins as well. So it really irritates me and triggers me to no end when I hear my aunt, total denial, total
Mm-hmm.
denial, and basically their attitude is, oh, okay, well, you didn't have perfect parents, get over it. No, you were abusive as parents.
And
You
let
were
me add this.
physically,
There
emotionally,
is a
and
function of
verbally abusive.
neglect in the Black community, right? And so this is the goal of childhood, is to learn everything you're going to need to become an adult in the society that you will one day be responsible for participating in, right? So it is a form of neglect and abuse to require a child to not have a childhood, to not experience innocence, because how else are they going to know evil when they see it as adults? How else are they going to know the positivity in avoiding evil as adults? And
They
so what I
won't.
mean by exactly, and what I
We
mean by
said
that is
yesterday.
you're taking something from them. You're requiring them to be in a position that's setting them up for failure because they're not qualified to do it. You did not let this person have a normal development. You introduced something into their life that they were not ready for. So that is not, to me, that is something that is a red flag to me when I see kids who are being placed in a parental position. I'm not saying the occasional 2 hours while you go to the store or whatever, leaving a teenager that's fully capable of making a meal in charge of kids for an hour while you watch a movie or take a bubble bath or whatever. Way different. Like, people need to understand that there is discernment. There's a difference when you leave your kids over the whole weekend. Some parents have left 6 and 7 year olds in charge of infants for weeks at a time while they go off doing who knows what. There is a difference. I'm
Mm.
not, admonishing all parents. I'm not admonishing parents for having some fun, some break, some relief, because that keeps a clear-headed parent that can now understand and come back with fresh eyes to parent their child. But what I am saying is, when you're neglectful, when you don't make sure your ends are tied up before you do all of this fun stuff, you haven't earned a break yet. And so therefore
Exactly.
you are now placing a burden on a child that did not ask for that burden. Your responsibilities are now being handed to that child. So I want to know, Cookie, like, when you did talk to a counselor once you became an adult, did you ever get a chance to process that? Because that was a loss. That was something that you lost.
You know what, Topaz?
Hold on, Cluster. Let
Initially,
me say this real
mhm,
quick, Cluster.
sure.
I gotta get out, Topaz. It was good being on your
Okay.
panel. Hey,
Thank you
Cluster
so much
B,
for
I
coming up,
appreciate
D.
it.
Thank you.
Yes,
No
yes.
problem, big dude.
All right.
And Big
And
Dude,
Chaos
this
Rain,
still I
salute,
still
man.
want my fitness stream. So this ain't the same now. Just so
All
you
right, I
know.
got you, love. I got you. Peace.
All right.
Peace.
Bye bye. Okay, go ahead, Cookie. Sorry about that.
No, actually, it wasn't until I had a black female for because
Mm-hmm.
what kind of like happened was, my kids were getting in trouble with law enforcement, and they would start them in counseling, and they would come out, and they would, when we go through the assessment or whatever, they
Mm-hmm.
would be asking me all these questions about me, and my attitude was like, bitch, what are you asking me about me? It's these
Right?
badass kids. They doing what they doing. What are you asking me about? I'm like,
They got caught
asking me
doing some
all the
bad stuff, and now
questions.
I gotta answer questions. Are you serious?
You know what? I was oblivious to the
Right.
fact that my parenting or the lack thereof, and boundaries, um, it was responsible for those manifestations of those behaviors. So that was a very difficult pill to digest. But I
Right.
think because I didn't want them to, I wanted them to get the help that they needed. Um, and it was just, they were very forgiving and they were very forgiving and understanding. But I think there was a time that I carried a tremendous amount of guilt. So then
Mm-hmm.
everything went. I couldn't say no to anything. Um,
Overcorrection.
yes. And kids will take advantage of that.
Well, yeah,
So
they're kids.
it leads to, as they're older, as they're getting older, um, cleaning up all their messes, which was a
Mm-hmm.
disservice to them ultimately, because again, as I'm healing myself, and I'm trying to undo some of the damage that had occurred, whether it was due to negligence or just emotional unavailability. I think I was very um, distant emotionally, well, turned off emotionally
Right.
because of so many different traumas. I don't think I processed emotions. I don't think I was just I never had the weakness. I was never able to show that side because I always had to be strong. So it wasn't an
Right.
option for me for me to exhibit weakness. Yes, they knew that I loved them. Yes, they knew that I cared. Yes, I provided for them, and they had, material things. We always lived very well, but I was not I was there physically, but not there emotionally, and that was the
And
part that was.
I want to point out to the audience that this is a process that Cookie is describing. This is the process of what happens once you realize, what's been done. And so undoing is a defense mechanism and is designed to try to correct something. But in this case, it was more of the same. It just was the opposite extreme. And so that's why we need support for our parents. We need we need the support other parents. You might have tried this kind of thing, and we basically would have a think tank, and people won't have to feel like they have to do these kind of things alone, because that's a defense mechanism that's naturally within us as a response to guilt and remorse. But it sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's the right answer, but in other times it's not. And the only way to figure out whether or not it's going to be the right answer or not is trial and error, or somebody with experience that helps you to understand that. So, I mean, Cookie, you thought that that was the right way that you were supposed to parent kids, because I'm sure that's what was being told to you when you were being required to be a parent as a kid.
Mhm.
As an adult, I get to do whatever I want, and the kids got to do it, and they just need to put up with it. And if they don't, then they're just bad kids. We've
Mhm.
all heard that. So this is something that we got to stop telling our kids in the community. I hate when I hear people call kids bad. Kids are a function of what they see, because that's their job in childhood, is to look at, to notice, to mimic, to practice. They do it all the time. Their playthings, they pretend to be adults. They think that's what, when you see your kids play, and they're showing you what they think adulthood looks like according to what they see, and they're practicing to be that. So we
Topaz.
get early. Oh, go ahead, Chaos. What?
Um, it's interesting to mention about learned behavior and
Mm-hmm.
our children that's not full-fledged adults yet, or what they
Mm-hmm.
proclaim as 18 years and over. We had the same issue with a young bird that jumped in on a string, and he was honest about his age. I think he's under 18. And
Mm-hmm.
the fellas had a very much a firm talk with the brother. Anyway, but you see, he already had a perception of the community from ghetto, this, that, men are
Yep.
bad, because of this environment, this so-called environment we're in. That with, and I think his parents maybe still together, or he's around his father more. But this is something that we instill to look at this community as a bad, negative thing. But no one's saying that we don't really have full control of our own communities. Not saying give an excuse for the bad behavior, but we have to be aware that there's a bigger enemy that perpetrates this dysfunction that we follow today, that we have not really, as a collective, got grips. And
Right.
I had to talk to the brother person offline and had to refer some books to him to start reading, have an understanding overall. Because by what you see, it's bad from the surface, but going through the literature work, you have a better understanding. Because now you have to research and read your environment more than just what you see. Because the seeing is the effects, but you have to understand the cause that led to the effect. So I
Right.
hope I was more helpful to the young brother. Not saying we won't see him again on this particular channel, not this channel, but the channel I was a part of. But it's
Right.
alarming me that even here, as content creators, YouTube, we could do a better
Right.
job. We could do a whole
Well,
lot
and you're
better.
right.
But
You're
the
right.
problem
You
is we chose not to do a better job. And not saying we have good intentions, depending on what you try and get out of, what people have, what to get out of this. But to find that he come up here and he's already displaying his vitriol to the community, it
right.
going through these channels feels the art misunderstanding he has of reality, and it's very concerning as a man. You get me?
Yeah, and this is the thing, Chaos. I'm glad you brought that up because see, now I do understand that there is a bigger enemy, right? But the thing is, we have to realize that we've been harmed to know that there is an enemy to look for. And we have to also understand that the first natural instinct is to look to those that are next to you right then. But once you rule them out, you'll be able to see that there's a bigger enemy. You have to first, that's why the first suspect in any crimes or whatever is going to be the people closest to you because they have the most access. But once you rule them out, now you have proof that it's an outside force. Now you don't have to revisit that later. So you get that out the way first, and then that way you now are able to see and understand and essentially know that there is a bigger enemy. I think a lot of people haven't finished ruling out the people directly next to you. The things that get in the way of that would be believing that somebody next to you has a better situation than you do. Not necessarily, but that's what happens when we're not open about what we all go through. When we lie, when we cover up things, when we pretend to be things that we're not. You still
Masquerading.
look like exactly
It's not
masquerading
showing
is
up authentically.
exactly. That is what keeps people from being able to rule you out. So therefore you do become a target. It's not always hating. Sometimes you resemble the perpetrator with your lies. So if you know you hadn't done anything to this person and you show up authentically, they'll be able to rule you out. So when I say that, what I mean is we look to the people directly in our community next to us and we feel like, oh, they got more money than me. They must be doing something wrong to get it. Somebody took favor on them that could have been mine. Why don't I get that? All of that stuff is a natural part of the process. But the thing is, you're supposed to get through that fairly quickly. When people are lying about how much they have, they remain on the suspect list. Now, I'm not giving anybody like support or a rationale for just being a hater. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you have to bring yourself back from that. That's a childish thought process. That's the first answer that people come up with. And then you check it, you rule it out, and then you move on and you see that there's a bigger enemy. So now, is it the fault of the person next to you who's lying? Not in totality. They're contributing to it, but the bigger enemy themselves is the person that is ultimately to blame because they are in fact the real perpetrators. So does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
I just think that I feel like you know what, Topaz, it's been very difficult for me to really exonerate Black people from being responsible for just
Right.
knowingly being, just knowingly choosing to be effed up individuals. And I
Right.
think that that's often used as as an excuse to justify dysfunctional behavior. Everything is not to be blamed. When you think when I think about my experiences in totality, I
Mm-hmm.
can't put the finger on um a non-Black person and say, well, it's bigger. If a
Right.
person, if a parent decides that they're going to be physically abusive to their child, if an adult decides that they're going to violate a child, it's
Mm-hmm.
not somebody from the outside coming in to do that. That is a conscious decision that that individual is making. So
Right.
I think that when it's appropriate, I don't think that I don't take issue with it. But I have a serious issue with saying it's outside external forces, because that sort of exonerates the people within the community that are predatory, that do things that are injurious to other Black people. I can't think of even when you think about even the I just find it difficult to constantly blame external sources or other races of people when these things are going on within our culture, or when you think about the molestation rates and the domestic violence rate. Is it someone from the outside of the community
No.
coming in and doing these things? One of the things my cousin said yesterday was, because we didn't have, these younger, and he's a millennial, but he was saying that because we didn't have a childhood, we just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't blame that on external sources. My mother was also a victim of domestic violence. There wasn't some blonde hair, blue eyed guy beating my mother and beating her kids.
Right.
That wasn't her boyfriend, her baby daddy, and all of that stuff. That was her husband. He was the one who terrorized the household. My mother was the one who enabled him to do that. So, when I think about this very cousin, this is actually my first cousin. And as a result of that, he's a total friggin' sociopath. So as I'm talking to him, I'm trying to talk to him. I can relate to what he's saying because I can recollect what he's talking about. But the connect with him understanding how it's affecting him as an adult, it just wasn't there. It was like talking to a brick wall. So
Right.
coming from a family of individuals like that, if you it took me, I was an adult before I realized that something was wrong, that something was not normal. That's just how normalized it is. I don't know that that can be blamed on external sources.
And you're absolutely right, because we talked about that, I think, before you got here, is that we can't overuse trauma that we've experienced as an excuse to keep perpetuating trauma. Because at some point, some generation should have been like, okay, if we didn't like it when it was being done to us, why would we continue it? Why aren't we strong enough to be the generation that changes it? So even though something is handed down to you, it takes courage. It's hard to do, but it can be done. It's not impossible, and it's necessary to make a change going forward, breaking generational curses. So not everything is responsible for, like, you still have the choice. You still, when something is done to you, you have a couple of different ways that you can respond to it. You can, retaliate against the person that actually harmed you, but there are some people that fall to the point of it's easier to just take it out on somebody who is defenseless, somebody that
Mhm.
has to depend on you, somebody that has to stay no matter what. We take our misery out on somebody beneath you. You step on them, and you step on them hard enough, you can get to the next level without having to actually do the work to overcome it within yourself. Making your peace with it that it happened to you means not perpetuating it into the next person. You're not paying the negativity forward. And that takes work. That's hard to do. And some people give up. They quit. They don't want to do the work to be able to do that. So the
But
key is knowing the difference, knowing when it's somebody outside of us, and also being able to see when it is somebody within us, so that we understand that that's a damage. That's another factor. Putting the blame where it actually belongs, being accurately in labeling where the damage is coming from, so you can get to the real core of it and stop it.
but it goes back to, again, with us as Black people, 'cause we groom in the society who is good and who is evil. It goes back to the notion, because we all groom in this religious thing called Christianity, especially. We already know what it is, that if we're not the representative of good, which is God, then we are represented as bad, evil. So it's easy to destroy somebody that looks like you because you are the epitome of the very thing that is the problem.
Right.
That's why people understand the power of not what Amos once said, the definition of words and images. I think one content creator said the best when they used the term racism. When we look at it, is it could be anybody, but if you look at when they start use special labels definitions, now
Mm-hmm.
it's demonized. So it's going to come to the point Black people going to have to get the scripts of the word and redefine reality. And it's funny, we create every slang term, but we didn't really hold a certain definition for ourselves for the world to understand, to separate us from the pack. And I think that would be the next step, to be honest.
We got a lot of things that we need to actually do, but the first thing is to stop being in denial.
Mm-hmm.
Stop normalizing trauma. Stop acting like dysfunction is just a part of life. Stop looking to other cultures to say, oh, well, they do it sometimes, so it must be okay for us to do it. Do you
No.
have to do, like, if everybody else jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do everything that somebody else
Some
does.
of them would. Clearly, some
Yeah, see,
people would. Some people would.
and
I mean,
that's the
it's
problem.
rational nowadays. Say, this person do it, they can get away. So you're not them. Stop it.
Right. Well, and how about they're not always getting away with it? See, some people follow other people directly into a consequence and then want to sit there and go, well, why am I getting punished? Because you followed them. You did it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I tell kids is that when they tell me, but they did it, why they didn't get in trouble? Because they weren't the one that was caught. They knew
Yeah.
something that you didn't know. They didn't tell you everything. And you didn't pay attention to see what it is that they were walking into. You didn't actually, process what they were doing to see the end result. And it's a way to get them to start already thinking about foresight. You make the choice on your own. Now, since they're kids, it's more of a learning activity and there's not like, a big, huge thing afterwards. But I expect adults to have learned this at some point in time. But the reality of the situation is we have a lot of adults who were not taught that. A lot of adults that didn't get guidance. They may not have gotten harmed or abused, as something that happened to them, but they also didn't get what they were supposed to be getting, which is the neglect part. They might have been exploited, which means they were allowed to do certain things because the adult was benefiting from it. So, different stuff happened. We have to basically get out of denial. We have to realize what all is causing the damage. Like, get real. Stop trying to worry about what it looks like. Just get to the point. We also have to, understand that some people didn't know, but some people did.
I think it has to be like also too, Topaz, like I think the environment plays a major factor in it. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that, unfortunately, now when you go to my experience being on the chitlin circuit of YouTube and being in the abuse community is the polar opposite,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have there, it's more of a support. um I don't think it's a coincidence that that community is predominantly not black.
Right.
Here, our community, your traumas are something to make fun of. It's something that's a talking point for humiliation and roasting and gags. Whereas in
Right.
other communities, something like that, they would be appalled by it. Um, Not only would they
And they
call it
blame the
out.
victim to cover up the fact that there was nothing that they could have done to stop it, and that there is nothing that you can do to prevent it from happening to you if somebody makes that decision. The thing about abusive people is that they made that choice. They decided to do this action. But people need a way to feel secure, like, oh, well, that would never happen to me because whatever the reason is that they blame the victim. That's exactly what that behavior is for, so that they can feel secure without actually having to do the work to feel secure, i.e., hold the perpetrator responsible. That takes more work than just blaming the victim.
I think that's a part of the norm.
Mm-hmm. It is,
I
and
I
that's
was
that's a
thinking
problem.
I was thinking back to what I went through, what I experienced with my stepfather. It was more, now he was my mother's husband, but he was my stepfather, and I think about the way that the community basically vilified me for having the audacity to. He had a very stellar reputation in the community, but nonetheless, um, I don't know why people found it so hard to believe that he would engage in an act of pedophilia on his
Mm-hmm.
stepdaughter, because he abused my mother on a regular basis. There were times when she had to run out of the house nude to try to get away from him. I've seen him do all sorts of heinous things, from bite her in the back uh, to this day at 47. I can't. I almost, the only way to describe it, Topaz, is it's almost like going into a homicidal trance. When I hear a woman hollering because she's getting beat, when these little videos are circulating around that end up going viral, I cannot watch it. I cannot um I cannot fathom hearing a child being beat. Those are just things that just, I can only describe it as that. The rage that I feel, because I think it reminds me of feeling helpless.
Right.
So as I'm
And
unpacking and trying to figure out what is, where did that, I was thinking that I was reading up the last couple of days on repetition compulsion, and
mm-hmm.
I to make the connection with how that played out in my adult life, and I'm still stuck trying to figure out who exactly was I trying to rescue. I'm not certain if I was trying to rescue myself, or my siblings, or my mother, or what was going on. But that's a cycle
It's
that
possible for
continued
it
in
to be a
adulthood.
combination of all of that.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
reason I say that is because if all of these people were harmed and you witnessed it, That the thing about the repetition compulsion, right, is that it's a form of undoing. You're trying to undo what happened. You need to be able to prove to yourself that had you just been a little bit older, that you would have been able to get out of it. It's a way of not feeling so helpless anymore. So whether that's you saving yourself, whether that's you saving everybody that was being harmed, you just basically keep unpacking and eventually you'll get down to the core of it. But I'm just preparing you that it's possible that you were trying to save all of these people, which is why the compulsion was so strong.
Okay. Okay. So it's like, where it, it, it's, and I think it's mind blowing, and it sort of stumbles me a bit when I think about, or stagnates my healing, when I realize how much of what I experienced as a child
Hmm.
played out in my adult life. Likewise, my siblings, and how that cycle repeated itself. And then you have all of these adults, which is why going to family functions, for me, is it's almost like crazy making, because you you know it's like you still love them,
Yep.
but I know what we experienced. I know what my cousins experienced, and to have them have these completely different recollections, or total denial that certain things ever happened, and that these things are playing out. Not just, I don't watch it just being played out. I didn't just witness, or didn't just experience it being played out in my life, but
Right.
my cousin's life. I remember one time I wanted to smack my aunt because my cousin struggles with low self-esteem. Very beautiful, um, very talented, very hardworking. She's a phenomenal mom, and her issue is that she struggles with self-esteem. My aunt, to this day, is still married to the man that molested her.
And forcing her to see this and relive it every time she sees him.
But acting like it never happened. Because I think
Right.
right now, to this day, what my aunt doesn't know is that I know that he did that.
Hmm.
And because my cousin was sworn to secrecy. Now, my other cousin, male cousin, when they became adults, he basically talked about it. He exposed it.
Hmm.
But these are the type of things that, and there's just like, okay, well, whatever happened, you didn't, okay, so you didn't have great parents, but you're adults now, so you're responsible. Yes, but there's just absolutely no freaking acknowledgement. And then they're always, here's the thing, and this was always a struggle for me. I do not understand how a mother could love a man that she was screwing more than she would her child. And that's the way that computes in my mind. I get the fact that there are lots of reasons why women don't leave abusers, why women don't leave men who hurt them and hurt their children. I understand that fact. But in my mind, that doesn't resonate. I can't, I've never been able to make that connection. And I think at some point I stopped looking for the answer.
Right. Well, and this is the thing, Cookie, is that things that happened in your life happened and they prevent you from being able to overly relate with your aunt. That helps to break the cycle. You are now a parent that would not perpetuate that would not keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to say that the things that happened to you before you found out about that were necessary or even okay. What I'm saying is life has a funny way of lining things up, because in your aunt's mind, she feels like as long as nobody's allowed to talk about it, she can pretend that it didn't happen. But what she's not paying attention to is that the person to whom it did happen isn't going to be able to keep that secret. And even if they are, she got to now hope that nobody else finds out. There's going to be too many loose ends to tie up. And so that's what this is for, is because, you are another loose end that she's not going to be able to tie up. And that's because at some point she's going to have to face what happened. It's
And
not meant for her to be okay with this for very long.
like I don't confront her about it because I don't feel I believe that my cousin is going to have to do that. But I think
Hmm.
the way that my cousin handles it is by acting as if it didn't happen. The
Right.
irony is that that was the aunt that called the authorities on my stepfather. So I could
Hmm.
never understand. So, but there was also they also had a lot of bad blood between them. He actually broke her jaw, okay, and she had to have
Hmm.
surgery in order to repair it. So there was animosity there. So that is who got the authorities involved with my stepfather, and ultimately he was arrested. But the irony is that she did not do that for her own child.
Right.
Now, with my mother, one of the things that I think I just got to a point where I just stopped because for a time I was very angry. I think there was a period where there was so much going on, and I was like literally like raising my siblings from the time I was like 13.
Hmm.
Okay, and as I said before, I got into drug dealing at 14. So there was a time when there was so much going on. I think I blocked out a lot of what happened when it was like I could remember it, but not really. And me and my first husband, we had a really bad argument, and he grabbed me one day. And I promise you, memories from 30 years before started popping
Yep.
into my head. I didn't know why I was terrified for my children to leave my eyesight. I didn't want them to go to into anybody's house. I didn't want them to spend the night at anybody's house. Their friends were welcome to come to my house. But I was
Right.
terrified because it's like, no, I don't know who's in there and who else they may have in there. And, kids like to have sleepovers. They want to go over their friend's house and that kind of stuff. And they didn't understand that. I think
Right.
just memories from years and years before. And when it hit me that I think my mom sort of, I, w- and it's been hard for me to try to understand whether or not that was her intent. But when I was little, she would call my aunties, and the neighbors and stuff would call me the bad seed. And I had never seen that movie, and I think
Right.
as an adult when I watched it, I
Angry.
remember thinking, why in the why would she call me that? Why would she refer to me as that? And as I began to understand different things about enabling and abusers, I began to wonder: is that, or are those the seeds that she planted, so that should I ever, so that if she was planning in advance to cover for the things that we were experiencing in the household by
Right.
telling people that I was, you know, making things up, or that, I had a vivid imagination, this, that, and all the other. And
Yeah. Covering her tracks. Yeah.
yeah, so for a
See,
time I
these
was
are the
angry.
actions that tell people that that is a person that fully knows what they're doing. They know that what they did or allowed was wrong, and so that they're making plans to avoid prosecution. Not saying that you were going to get her locked up, but you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Avoid the consequences. So
Yeah,
this is the thing that makes it so hard to forgive people is the behaviors that they do that make sure that they're never going to have to face consequences that they fully know exist. That means you know that those consequences exist.
but you know what I did. The reason why I there was a time when I was very angry at my mom. I think I've dealt with those feelings. I don't have those sort of feelings about her anymore. But there was a time when I was very angry because what happened, what that did was me spending the majority of my time as a young woman and in my early adulthood trying to undo that label of being the bad seed or of being the problem child, because at that point initially I didn't understand that The reason why I was a problem child in school, fighting teachers, fighting other students, is because of what I was experiencing at home. And back then,
Absolutely. We talked about that last week with Bunny. So yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Kids are going to act out these things. If you have a child that is struggling in the school environment, because they're supposed to be there to A, learn academically, and B, learn socially. So when you have a child that is struggling with that, there is something that they're not getting that allows them to be free and independent and willing to take chances in order to learn. I'm sorry, Cookie, go ahead. I just
no,
want to point that
you're
out.
fine. So it was like it led to me trying to overcompensate. Okay, well, don't worry about that, mom. I'll get that, or I'll handle that, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. So it led to me almost trying to do whatever I had to do to be, to get that label from off of me. And when I realized it was a manipulation, that it was a way to be able to get what she wanted from me, I was infuriated. I thought about all the years I had enabled, all the years I had covered her addiction, taken on her responsibilities, and I was very angry at her for years. And the because of the fact that I felt that way about my mother, I loved her and I loathed her at the same time. It was a cognitive dissonance of sorts. And it wasn't until I worked through um, that
Right.
I was able to forgive her, and to accept the fact that there were just some things that she wasn't going to be able to give me an answer for. I can't wrap my brain around the concept that a person would be able to sleep with someone that was sleeping with their daughter. Because
Right.
when it comes to the molestation aspect, my mother knew and did nothing about it. She said that she was going to, but she didn't. And it continued to happen. And they continued to stay together.
Right.
So when it was exposed, a lot of that fury was directed towards me for saying something, for not
Yeah.
giving her an opportunity uh to handle it, air quotes handle it. But
Right.
I mean, you know the gist of that. It was never going to be handled. She was never going to do any. I don't believe that.
It was a pacifier to calm you down so that you didn't go out and say anything and
Mm-hmm,
that you left it in her hands and then she wasn't going to do anything rash. Yeah.
mm-hmm. So it was like those traumas and those experiences, when it's said and done, it affects the way that you choose partners as an adult. And this is the reason why attracting uh dysfunctional mates that are abusive, that too feels familiar, especially if you've
Right.
never had um healthy relationships, or if you don't have a blueprint of a healthy relationship, you know and it
It's
wasn't
the
just
devil
with
you
my
know.
mom. Yeah.
The devil you know is better than the one you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what people do is it's a false dichotomy. They ignore a secret third option. Maybe there isn't a different devil coming. Maybe you'll actually get to the peace when you leave the devil you know. But people, like, that's the thing that we teach each other. We teach our kids that there is no peace for black people. That this is just life. That it's not possible. That if you leave one thing, something else bad is definitely going to happen. And that's not always true. Even if it does, you can at least live in the moment to accept the peace that you get to feel by escaping. That's one of the reasons why people have a hard time leaving abusive or toxic situations.
Okay. So
So I
it
just
just
wanted to add that part in, Cookie, just to
No,
drive
I
the point home.
appreciate
I'm
that.
sorry about it.
I appreciate that. So it was just like, when you're trying to do um that was where I was initially when I came to this platform, as far as in that particular sector, to try to work through that. And once I had gotten to a certain point in my recovery, after my separation, I wanted to start. I started to basically understand that if this was my experience and I was affected the way that I was affected, certainly that there were other Black women that were affected in the same way. So perhaps I can help them. I think a part of the problem was I was trying to help before I was healed myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and initially, it was pretty much just like vlogging what I felt about that day or how I got through that day, because that was not, you know, a breakup or a divorce or a separation from a narcissist isn't the same as, it's not that a divorce from a normal person isn't painful, but that there are things that narcissists do to compound that grief in
Right.
that loss and that pain and suffering. So it was pretty much working through that and then trying to help other Black women. And again, that codependency kicked in, and
Yep.
I saw somebody I thought was a victim, and those instincts to defend kicked in, only to find out that um this was actually the chick who doxed me originally. That's
Mm-hmm.
how that ended up happening, because I wouldn't co-sign the person scamming,
Right.
and that was the price that I paid. And I think that made me livid, because the basically the subscriber base that I had built, um, which was other recovery victims. And that's why so many of the sisters are able to remember my old videos. Even people that I didn't know knew my original videos. I was
Yeah, like
flabbergasted
me.
when I knew, right. When I'm like, people like, oh yeah, I remember I seen that video. I'm like, what? I had that
Yeah.
video like a year ago, but they remember it. But that was my original purpose. So it's like, okay, in order to get, at some point I realized that, okay, I'm getting further and further away from my healing. I need to get back on track, remain in a state of mindfulness, and focus on my own healing. Um, and basically do content as I'm inspired to do it. If I'm inspired to talk about something, but making my own healing a priority. Um,
Absolutely. Now, and that's another thing is when you do that, you're showing what the process looks like. So you would still be helping your subscriber base. They need
mm-hmm,
to see, because that's one of the things that we don't get is healthy modeling. So if they can see what the healing process looks like when done appropriately, they can know what to expect, and it can be more helpful than you know. Like you don't always have to be the person that is hands-on helping,
mm-hmm,
but we have a tendency to value that more because we can see it. It's
yeah,
only after, like we place our value in things based on its proximity to us, which is a childlike thought. As an adult, you're supposed to have learned how to value additional things based on what it actually brings. And so that's the one thing that this community never has is healthy modeling. So if anything, when you are having a time where you are needing to focus on your healing, you're still helping by showing people what that process looks like. I'm glad you came up for this discussion because I think you have a great example of, what that would look like. You're trying to give back to your subscriber base, but they need what we don't get to see is how you should handle appropriately when people keep trying to pick at you and keep trying to re-trigger you. You know, like
thank
that's
you,
the one thing
Topaz.
that's missing.
I think one way that I've decided that being an empath, right? And you
Hmm.
know how we are with our Scorpio antennas, like they reach all the way up to
Yeah.
Mars. Intuitively,
Yes,
like this
ma'am.
is like
And I'm not
we
even
pick up
sorry
that
because it's part of
energy.
my gift.
Yes,
Deal with it. That, but
you
don't
know,
get in the way of it. But
that's it.
I got
So it's like, okay, well, one way I found that that it protects my energy is to completely unplug. Like
you.
literally have to tell people, like, listen, don't send me anything. I don't want to see anything. Do not send when people I'm now beginning to block people that send me things, send me links to what somebody's saying. I quite frankly, I don't care. There's nothing I can do about what they're saying. If they're not showing being my family or my grandchildren. Listen, I'm not interested. I found that when I do uploads, that allows me to be able to focus on what I'm saying, the message that I want to convey, and it's a protection for my energy, and
Mhm.
limiting the live streams, because I feel like those that are there for the niggerism, when you actually do actual content, they're going to go someplace else, you know. And that's the tribe that you want. That's the tribe that
Mhm.
ultimately I want. Not the ones that are just there just solely for the dysfunction. It's like, you know who your true supporters are, because they're there no matter what you talk about. They
Yeah,
have
you can
been
see how invested they are in your
right.
healing.
They
You know,
right,
like they'll be doing, they won't do things that is against your healing, and they'll be doing things that's geared towards supporting your healing.
right. Because it's like that's why I love my squad, because it's like I could be turned up, or I could do something calm, or I can do true crime. It doesn't matter. They're there front and center. So it's not necessarily about a game of numbers for me. I actually do, even though you try not to, you actually do develop affinity for certain subscribers. If you see them every single day, if you talk to them every
Hmm.
single day, you do, you form a liking for them, and I don't see them as just objects or just blue wrenches in my chat. I actually see them as individuals and see them as people.
Right.
um so um I
And
think
that's
with
natural
those that
because
are,
these are people that are showing that they are supporting, and
yes,
it, and basically they have a vested interest in helping.
yes.
Even if they get the answer wrong sometimes, that's way more forgivable than somebody that's willfully harmful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's just like taking it a little bit at a time. And even like as far as my separation, I never really, I don't even think I had an opportunity to grieve. I think I was
Hmm.
stuck in survival mode, and putting on, not to, so as not to give a narcissistic individual any sort of gratification of the amount of, now that was 2 years ago, of the amount of pain and suffering that I went through, or that I experienced, or just how painful that was. um I don't think I had an opportunity to actually process everything, and to really try to understand, not putting myself, I'm not comfortable at this point in my recovery with putting myself in the position of a victim. I see myself as a survivor at this point, but I also want to understand what was faulty about my pattern, my selection of pattern, that led to that, so that I don't repeat it again. And understanding how all of that, just not just that aspect, but decisions that I made as an adult, how
Hmm.
that factored into the training that was inculcated in my brain from my family of origin. So it's a lot to unpack, and it's going to
And
take
let
some
and let
time.
me just hold on, Cluster, before you go forward.
Hmm.
Let me just add this: you have to be at the right stage in the process of healing before you can do something like that.
Hmm.
You can't just jump into that in the early stages of the healing, because then it has the adverse effect. It lowers your self-esteem. It makes you feel like you don't have the motivation or the ability to go forward. So
Hmm.
you got to be at a place where you've had some successes first. That's why they have those steps in certain orders. And so that's the damage of people just going around trying to just, be somebody's therapist when they need professional help, because it
Hmm.
took years in practice and training to be able to detach yourself from somebody else's problems while you're listening to it. That's not something that we as humans are just born knowing how to do, because we're born knowing how to connect. You also have to be trained and learn and practice how to turn it back on when you get back into regular society, when you're out of your office. So I'm saying this to say is that it's a job for a reason. You get paid and reimbursed for it for a reason. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be expecting people to do it for free. Not you specifically, like, but people in the community. Don't expect people to do it for free. Don't offer to do it for people for free, because it takes a lot of work for a reason. It is a whole job and career field.
That's facts. That's fact. That's why do you see my little disclaimer where I'll be like,
Yeah.
the Cookie Monsters and
You and
ghetto
them disclaimers, Cookie.
relationship
I was
expert. It's like, listen, no, I am not the professional. And in some instances, sisters, I don't think they understand that, first of all, it's okay to seek therapy.
right.
Certainly, if you have certain
And when they keep
traumas.
going to other people to do it, like you're showing what
Yes.
the process is. You're doing an awakening. The work
Hmm.
still needs to be done.
I'm in
When
therapy
they
too. I
yeah,
had to go back
exactly.
to therapy. Like, listen, when I went through a phase where I listen, bitch, I'm not feeling no better. Fuck you in this therapy. Then it's like, okay, you stop
And we
being
know when we
therapy. It's like,
expect that. We handle
right.
it like it's part of the process. We know when it's coming. We prepare. We get it.
Yeah, my therapist was like, welcome back. Well, what were you doing during the time? I said, acting a
Right.
complete damn fool, you know. But I had that was a decision that I made that it was going to be in my best interest.
Right.
Um to get back into therapy if I actually want to heal,
Right.
and to be able to handle triggers, because in this particular instance it's occurring on social media. What happens if it occurs in real time? How am I going to handle
Right.
that? And
Right.
I had regressed so much in my healing that at times it was difficult for me to get grounded. It was just like I'm just like in survival mode. Just like I might be I'm feeling like I'm in the house with my family of origin again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm stuck in survival mode. So everything I'm triggered by, or I'm defensive by defensive with everything. So it's like, okay, well, first and foremost, what I need to do is pull myself back physically, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on my own healing, and focus pretty much on the content, not on content creators, not on who's in whose chat room. Like, listen, I'm just over it. Like,
Right.
after a certain amount of time, when it's like, listen, like, this is too draining. You know,
Yeah.
um, a lot of people don't understand. What brought it to my attention? Neon brought it to my attention that uh live streaming and social media is like a portal for
Yeah.
people, for emotional vampires, and for empaths it affects us differently because it's extremely draining. A lot of
Right.
people don't know that sometimes during live streams I would get so emotionally drained I would almost be ready to faint,
Yeah.
and people
It
wouldn't know
does.
that.
It takes a lot out of you, even if you're doing calm content. It's
Hmm.
still a lot because there's the openness, the ability for people to reach you more closely than if you do a pre-recorded upload because you're already separated and away from that material. It's out there now for other people to take it and do what they will. But in a
Yep.
live stream, so now the way I get around that is this is not my actual practice. I have taken no oath to anybody on here. Nobody is in a therapeutic relationship with me on here unless they sign on to do so. And then secondly, we would not be posting that here on the internet. So I have not diagnosed anyone on the internet, but what I have done was draw logical similarities and point them out for people's information so that they see what it looks like. With that being said, if you come in my chat on some goofiness, you get what you get because
Hmm.
you not see this it's dangerous for me to have you come in here and invade my energy, but then you get the response that I have available for you. And I'm not holding like I mean you can't that's what you came in here for to
Let's-
get. So therefore, I'm not sorry.
right, right. So it's like, I always listen. I always get that little disclaimer, like, listen, I'm trying to get focused back again, but listen, don't get that part twisted. I'm still human, so it's things that I
Right.
get triggered by. But I realize it's people that enjoy my reaction when I get triggered, and for them it's entertainment. But for me, it's like, listen,
You
it's
really are
extremely
feeling
draining.
that. I think
And
they
it's
forget that you're a
yes,
person that's actually having to feel that when you respond. So for
right,
me, I'm just gonna put it out there. We're gonna both share in this misery. You came in
right,
here now. You came in here on your own volition. You walked in here. Now I'm gonna trap you in here, and you go handle it until you begging and screaming to get out.
right. It's like, I'm gonna
That's
bring
what I got.
down that I'm here. I'm gonna bring the pain, but it's like, okay,
Right.
I
Because you
just,
came in with a
I
negative
do.
intent.
Hmm. Like, I do feel like my outbursts have gotten less, far few in between, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they have gotten less. They're not as frequent as they were before. Whereas now I think, like you said, knowing that was that, and that was powerful in that knowing that that's the intent to trigger you
Right.
for a response, to provoke you, into
Right.
responding. And the other thing that is important to remember is that you have the choice as to whether or not you respond. You
True.
don't give away your power in that way by responding simply because a person wants you to respond. I'm going to respond if I want to, if I feel like responding, if at all, you know,
Right.
um, and realizing that you do have control over that, and that you may not have
Right.
control over another person's actions, but yours you certainly do have control over. Now, when I'm grounded and in my right, what's my people sometimes people be like, "Oh, you said this and you said," and I'm like, "No, I ain't said that." And listen, I go
Yeah.
back. I be tripping when I go back and when I listen to my live stream sometimes, Topaz, I'll be like, "What in the fuck was I? What was I thinking?" I go into
Disassociation.
my mind
You
completely.
know that. You know that, right, Cookie?
Yeah, it's almost like a damn alter ego was up there, and I'm just
Yeah.
sitting up there like, well, who in the hell just said that? Like, did I just say that? Yes. Just my mind. That don't be reading the chat. It's be stuff going in the chat. I ain't listen. I ain't seen nothing in the chat, and I'm sitting up there ranting for 3 hours. I like listen. It's something got to give. Like this is too. It's too much. It's too much,
Well,
and
and
it's
this is another
unhealthy.
thing is when you are performing of any kind, believe it or not, this is a form of performing arts, right? There is the tendency that come on, T. Now I'm going somewhere with this. Don't be laughing yet now. So there is the tendency for you to disassociate if you are really in tune with your content. Sometimes you have something planned and then you go somewhere else and it's a masterpiece because it flowed naturally, right?
Mhm.
With that being said, disassociation is not always a bad thing. It could mean routine. It could mean mastery of whatever the skill is. The other thing is sometimes, like you can choose your response, but sometimes if you are triggered, that's one of the impacts of trauma is because it was a time where you were powerless or either you attempted to gain power and wasn't able to do so. So then you have dysregulation. You are not in control. You essentially lose it. That's the either the freeze where you're hypo under reactive, or either that is the hypervigilance and things of the sort where you're hyper reactive. So you possibly aren't going to remember. If you've ever been a person that fought a lot, there are times where you black out and then later you are reminded of what you did in that instance and it seems so different than you because it was.
Mhm.
So I do want to put that in there. Is that there are times where you are not in control of your actions. That's what it means to be triggered. And at that moment, that person, they evoke that. But once you realize that that's a trigger for you, now you have the responsibility to act sooner. Don't
Mhm.
stay in places where you know that there's the likelihood of a trigger is going to be there. And when you are going to a place that you cannot avoid, prepare for that trigger. Have some type of support available so that you can manage in that trigger in that moment. If that's another person to like keep you grounded, if that's like a rubber ball or something where you concentrate on a texture to remind yourself to stay grounded in reality, these are mindfulness techniques, which is a form of healing trauma. It's a therapy
Yeah,
practice
that.
that can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Remaining in a state of, and I don't know if you've ever, or if you're familiar with the work of Sandra L. Brown, the woman who wrote Women Who Love Narcissists and Psychopaths. That's something that she puts a lot of emphasis on, being
Right.
grounded, being in a state of mindfulness. And what she said about women that experience, because she primarily treats women, even though we know that it's not limited to women, it's not gender specific, but she primarily treats women. So she talked about the need to actually live a gentle life after certain
Hmm.
traumas, just because of the fact that that is so traumatic. I don't think a lot of people look at long-term emotional and verbal abuse in a intimate type of relationship as something that can cause trauma to the brain, but it certainly does.
Right.
um and she talks about that, living a gentle life where it has, where it's quiet. That's why there's a difference. And it's almost like when I'm in my hometown, I'm not even able to get into that a zen zone here. When I'm in North Carolina, oh, listen, I'm in my zone. I can go outside, sit on the porch, look at the frogs, listen, I've seen animals I ain't never seen in my life in Philadelphia, see the geese. I had these two little gangster geese in some of my videos. You can hear them honking. They would be out there honking for food every morning. I am in my zone. Here it's a little bit different. Now I'm going to be transitioning from Philadelphia back down to North Carolina, so I imagine that it's going to get better. But if for some reason it's just very difficult for me to be here and heal. Maybe it could be the proximity to my family. It could be the environment because of because of what the community is. I'm not able to actually get into a mode where I'm relaxed.
Exactly. It's a place where being in a relaxed state is not something that's valued, appreciated, or allowed.
Right. Because if you do that here, you're going to have it'll be like a target in the middle of your head. If not to take advantage of you in some shape, form, or fashion. And that's just the way it predominantly is. Now, I'm sure in some small corner of Philadelphia that I've never seen or never heard of before, it may be different. But here, it's not conducive to that. Like, you have to be on your toes and have your eye out for different things, and it doesn't, predators come in all shapes, forms, and sizes here. Women, men, you just have to be on point. So I think that too has had an effect.
Well, now this is the thing. It's not like it's also a form of trauma to be calm in a situation like that. Because see, when we think about responses to traumatic events, the things that make it a normal response would be if it's affecting most of the survivors, if it's socially acceptable, and if it's effective in your life there. So to be calm in a state of perpetual danger is neither of those things. Most people would not be calm in that situation. It's not socially acceptable because you get punished by society for being calm because you now become a target. And then it's not effective in life because it brings too much attention. You're standing out a little too much, and then you might possibly be harmed for not, paying attention or what have you. So that's another form of trauma. When you see somebody that's super at peace in chaotic situations, that is a problem. Because most people would aim to escape that if they truly believe that they deserve to live a peaceful life, like the book that you were talking about. When they believe that that's something that they truly deserve and have the right to, they're not going to want to stay in it. Their natural instinct is going to want to be to escape that. So when they don't, there's something else at play. These are the things that tell us that somebody has something else going on with them.
It's like,
so I want to check in real quick with.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Topaz.
No, that's okay. I want to check in with Chaos real quick to see if he had anything he wanted to add here, because it's at 2:15 about now. So I was gonna try to keep this underneath 2:30. When we have heavy topics, I don't want to have a long stream because it's gonna be draining for the people watching it. It's gonna have too much information in it. And if I need to, we can break this up and do another series. Because Cluster, I'm still holding you on the hook for my series. You know that, right? So once you finish,
let
me while I got let me grab some paper and let me write some stuff down. Which topics did you
we were supposed to do a personality disorder series, so don't be getting all involved in this other stuff on here, because I'm gonna kidnap you. If I have to come to Philly and put you in a trunk and we just do these series real quick, I will go to the ends of the earth for my series and my content now.
All right. I'll get you. I'm gonna hit you up in the email, and we'll work something out, because I know evenings. I know that up until, I think, what did you say, like 7 in the evening, like most okay,
during the week. Now that's not every single day, so there could be some days, like if I get a cancellation or I get an early day or something, then I just let me know during that week if you got a busy week. And that way, if I get an early day or a cancellation, I can just hit you up, like, heads up, this Wednesday I'll be done at 4.
Okay, we can do like a little narc at night type of thing.
Yeah, you know what? I like it.
Yeah. That sounds
Nice.
good.
Okay, Chaos, go ahead. Let me know if there's anything you want to add, anything that stood out to you in this convo so far.
Um, uh, Everything is on point. Have no complaints. Yeah, it's already past the 2 hour mark. You know, I have to do my little show, my calling show.
Yeah, because you're on Sundays too, huh?
Yeah.
So Chaos, I don't know if are you a mod in the channel because you can drop the link to the show that we did last Sunday.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I'm on YouTube right now. Yeah, I'll type something so you could do that.
Right, or either under the comments in after the video is finished, whichever one you is quicker. Because if you're not on YouTube right now, then that means you got to go log in and all of that.
No,
So
no. You'll see my name there. I'm right
oh, there
there.
we go. Okay.
Right now, I gotta find a new player to create a MP4 movie. My Windows Maker doesn't work no more for some reason, so I had to go purchase some other software to do some. Once I get my channel back and running, because I'm on jail.
And when you get all of that set up, let me know what the setup look like so I can see how much of it I'm gonna get because I'm gonna
Be
just take the
careful.
idea.
Just be careful, because I spent a couple of $100 on software that was just for video editing
But
and stuff.
nothing.
It was pure trash. So take your time.
Now, what's the name of that? So I don't go
Listen,
by that.
I had purchased Movavi. Let me see. Hold up. I look at my
Movavi.
desktop. I had
think that's
Movavi.
like a new Windows Maker, Movadi, MOV with a J, that type.
It's no, it's
Mhm.
MOVAVI, Movavi, and then give me 1 second. It's Cyberlink, or it used to be Power Director, but now they call it Cyberlink. That is mediocre, and then the other one is, hold on. It was just that, listen, that's how trash it is. But I said I got the iMovie Maker on my MacBook, so I'm going to start using that. Thank God that came with something, and it's really nice because it's the Catalina version. So other than that, like just make sure that you research Cyberlink Power Director 365, trash. Movavi video editor, trash. And these things when and Wonder Share Filmora. It was I couldn't believe it's like, these things are not cheap, and it's I'm just not satisfied. I'm not satisfied, and if I had to do it again, I would not purchase those programs.
So can you get your
I'm
money
just not
back? Like
satisfied.
you give them a bad review and tell them like, look, this is ridiculous, and get your money back, or it's just gone. Because I will call the corporate and be like, you should have been ashamed for yourself for putting this out here, and I'm gonna need all my money back.
You know what? They charge you by the year. I think it was about $100 per software program, maybe a little over $100. And I think that you renew it every year, or you have the option to pay for it all at one time, which might have been like three something or like two something or something like that. It depends on which one it was. I can't remember each one specifically, but I know it was either $100 or close to a little over $100 or just under $100. And the thing about it is, and that's just for the software itself without the watermark. Now, for the type of graphics and stuff I got, that's what costs more money. So I spent the money to have the extra, the extra effects and all that stuff like that. So
it wasn't a program itself. So technically, you got the effects. Oh, that sucks.
And it's like, okay, so now I got all of these effects and I'm going to use it. I mean, it's constant. It's like it's buffering. I went and did a video output, and it was like static. It was just trash. I just was not satisfied at all. So it's like, okay, now before I purchase another one, well, now I don't have to, because I have the I think it's iMovie on the MacBook on the MacBook. It's not the MacBook Pro, it's the MacBook Air. So I'll be using that. So fortunately, I don't have to buy any more software. Now, I mean, if you're talking about just basic editing, basic voiceover, it works for that. But as far as like what I would like to do, no. I ended up happening into like the intro. I ended up happening to go to different get different software for that. So
Man, I got
wasn't
so
worth it to
I'm
me.
trying to do an intro. It just makes me exhale to think about it. I'll deal with it anyway. But I at least got a logo already, and so I'm a start using it in September. But I'm trying to decide between StreamYard and Zoom because everybody seemed to be so much happier with Zoom. But it's more stuff I get to do in
Zoom is
StreamYard.
the
So we're gonna talk about it.
profession, baby. Get it?
Mhm.
Cause if you're a conversation, I advise get the Zoom.
Yeah,
See,
everybody loves the Zoom. I'm not a fan of Zoom. I know you can do more with it, but I'm not necessarily I don't know if I don't listen. Wait a minute. I don't know if it's that I like StreamYards better or just that I just haven't had the time to invest in learning Zoom the way that I did StreamYards. I think when I first started using StreamYards, it was complicated because I wasn't familiar with it. So I think
oh, I
maybe
know. I
if
hated
I
it in the beginning. I was like, I
yeah,
don't feel like doing this. Why can't I just press the live button? It's right there on the app.
all right.
But you gotta have all these subs for
Yeah,
that.
man.
So
They got
then with Zoom, I just ain't even. I hate having to use it for work, but I don't
technology
know.
said you got to learn tech. They force you to
I
understand.
know chaos. I know.
Don't
I'm
be
gonna
lazy.
do
Yeah,
it.
it's like you have that's almost par for the course. Like you
Right,
you could put it off, but it's like a learning curve. So the sooner you start, the better. The sooner you start getting familiar with it, that's probably the best course of action instead of
right.
just
I'm
trying
gonna
to
do
learn
it
it all at
because
once.
I don't like to let stuff beat me. So I'm gonna eventually do it. But it's just like the more I put off having to start, the more I put off having to actually sit there and work through it. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it done.
Mhm.
And
But
then look, right on cue. Yes, I know.
but thank you for inviting me on the panel. Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming. I'm
Thank
glad you could tell this story in a way that like people can hear, what they need to take from it.
hmm
People take things from the story that you tell, and at least this way they can know what they need to be taken from it.
hmm Yep. Yep. So
And
Michelle,
I want to say I'm proud of you for
for
still
hanging with us.
telling the story.
Thank
You're not being pushed into not speaking because that's what people want. So I want to say I'm proud of you for still telling the story even through all of that, not being silenced.
Oh, thank you, Topaz. Oh, yeah, and I think that may be the stubborn part of me as a Scorpio that no,
Oh yeah.
that's not going to. I'm not going to be intimidated by that. And then I remember listening to other people tell their story, and
hmm
that helped me to be able to understand certain things about my own story. So certainly, it could possibly liberate somebody else from a psychological prison that they may be in, and
Right.
to know that they can work through it, that it is a process. It is going to take a lot of work, but it most definitely can be done.
Well, yeah, and I want people to picture this visual, right? So you know how like let's say you are at a swimming pool and it has like the little volleyball net or whatever in the middle of it. If you want to get to the other end without having to get out of the water, you're going to have to hold your breath, go underneath it, and then you'll pop out on the other side exactly where you want it to be. So you
Mhm.
got to go through a little bit of something. It might be a little uncomfortable, it might take some work, but when you get to the other side, it'll be well worth it. It's
Yep.
either that or just stay where you are and just watch from afar people having fun on the other side.
hmm And living versus actually, because and you see so much of that. Well, I see so much of that. People not actually living, they're existing. And I
Hmm
think the virtual world gives them a way to be able to do that, but it's not really living. It's
Right.
existing or living vicariously through virtuality versus reality.
hmm
And that's why you often see that disconnect with reality in things because they're so caught up in what's going on virtually.
Yeah,
That's
like
not
when
living.
when Instagram or whatever went down, was that like last year maybe for like 3 hours? People came
hmm
right back on there with a vengeance, all posted about the trauma they suffered from not having access to Instagram. I
hmm
remember thinking to myself, like, are y'all serious? I didn't even know Instagram had went down. I was trying to figure. I thought it was like one of them challenge hope things that people do, where everybody just saying and see what people's reaction was or whatever. When people was doing that a while back. So I didn't even know this was a thing until I really saw like on the news that this had happened, and I'm like, oh Lord, this is news now. This is on Channel 26 News
You
that
know what?
Instagram went down for
I
3 hours.
I don't even know that people, and it's so different because I don't even know that people have a desire to interact with other human beings, like where you actually sit down with people and have a conversation without your cell phone, without you looking at your cell phone, he
No,
looking
people
at his
can't do
cell
it because
phone.
that's
No,
what the
no,
conversation gonna be about.
we're not.
They're
We're
gonna be
not.
sitting at the table talking about what's on their phones. Go ahead, Chaos.
No, we live in a digital. We're living in an industrial. Actually, in the techno age now. This is designed to keep people disconnect. Think about the antisocial of human beings now in the 21st century. We're only in the first generation, and this is just only stepping stools of what is to come. You know,
Yep.
you think it's bad now? If anybody is not born a certain era, the only way you're gonna interact with the opposite sex, you're gonna have to be texting. No, there's gonna be less facial interaction. It's gonna be so antisocial. You're gonna think, said, "Damn, that was born on the wrong planet or something." That's where
But that's the part of the problem, though.
It's a problem, but a lot of
everybody's
people out there
antisocial.
we have to adjust because that's where the world is heading now. I mean, as much as I harp said, people should still be sociable. Even certain major content creators said people should be sociable, but how the environment is structured with technology
Yeah.
is designed to make you less interactive and very
Well,
antisocial.
people could still choose. People could say no, because this is where I think the
I know,
flipping point
but
was.
you got to understand, Topaz. We're at an age now that we don't like this, but our children that's now adults, this is their thing now.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand
Well,
if anybody has children now that's under 18, they tell them said, put down the phone, eat your food, talk to
oh
them.
yeah, they die inside when
Right
they
here.
don't have a phone.
Every time you see them on the phone, the tablet.
But this is the problem. Once they put work applications and certain jobs on the computer, now you are responsible for knowing what's going on with the computer, keeping up with it as part of the way that you pay your bills. So now that they got school on there too, it's like the more and more areas of life that you have to go on the internet to do, then the less and less you are motivated or even have a need or have the ability to log off. We're still responsible for knowing the things that are on social media
Yep.
because the belief is a reasonable person would know because it's everywhere. Everything else that you do is on here. So yeah. Oh Lord, chaos. Why does sound like a bad plan? Go ahead.
Since you mentioned that, I might have to either do a show on my channel or I'll just do the call-in show and tell people what's the best route to move in this digital space, especially for internet. I think I've cracked the code to a bit because I think I did a pretty decent job. Besides all the super tech stuff like the other investigation that's another story. But there are ways to maneuver properly in this tech space without all that worries, But people gotta be willing to listen. So I'll figure it out in the coming weeks if I'm gonna do it. I think
Kenny, that don't count. Kenny, I'm sorry, Chaos. Kenny, that don't count because you listen. I don't know whether Kenny is like a cyber octopus because he be in 10 different chats
be everywhere
on panels, giving super chats, sending cash app. Like, what the hell is going on? Commenting
and be doing additional stuff too, reading articles and stuff in the background. Right. Just that ain't even all of it. It just no.
Right. So your cyber octopus, your cyber octopus title don't. That's cheating. You're a cheater.
Right. I can't watch if you say anything on a stream where you're talking about technology, you get one word wrong, he's coming up there. Just so you know.
Right.
He's gonna get you.
Okay. All right,
folks.
That's it. Come Topaz, much sat down now. If we want to speak too long, we want our people to go back and digest this wonderful stream.
Yeah, actually. That's the whole point, is like in little chunks. Now, if we have to do a follow-up, we can, but I don't want it to be like so much where they just where you just sitting there trying to exhale and that is a lot. And then they won't watch the rest of the video because it's you don't want to go into something that gonna be 6 hours long and it's so heavy and deep. If you ever had like a class like that, or if you have to go to certain lectures or some certain church services, anything where it's multi hours long, when it's heavy, you just don't even want nothing else to do with it. You get burnt out for a while, and that's not the goal. That defeats the purpose.
Yep.
I'm trying to be part of the solution and not the problem.
Yep.
All right, good night, everybody.
It's good to reflect back on it too. Like, so next, when I as I process or as I rewatch the stream to listen to the stream for anything that I wanted to ask or something that I wanted to add and get your insight on, just that, well, not from, not not as a, as I know that's your occupation, but to just, to get insight on, or just get tips, to compile a list of tips of how to deal with certain or different little coping strategies to be able to implement. So,
well, I would love to do that. Just let me know when we could talk more about like the setup and what all we want to do, what all we want to present. We can talk more about that. Just let me know, because see, the thing is, it is my profession, right? But I love what I do, so it just comes out anyway. So I might as well try to compile it into something that's digestible so that I can, try to make a difference. That's my goal.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for everybody came through and showed support, that hung out with us in the chat. I see Joe.
Thanks for the generous cash apps. Thanks for the attention. Thanks for the supportive comments. Thank you, Cluster, for coming up and being so open and willing.
Thank you for having
Thanks,
me.
Chaos, for coming up and being supportive and giving us the information that we might not have seen on your channel. So make sure you drop the link to the show we did last Sunday, talking about educating the community on mental health, and also the stream that you were talking about where you were helping the young man, because this is more things like that need to happen.
It was on some other friend's channel, but don't worry. Once everything's set up, I'll let you know.
Yeah, so when you get off probation, when you get off papers, Chaos?
I don't know, man. It's gonna be first week of October, man.
October?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you know what? I think you need your channel back, because you've been all over the place.
You lost your channel for what?
No, man, my channel's suspended, man.
Because you be acting up over there.
No, man, they suspended me over some dumb shit, and then the email, it didn't make no sense. Talking about, say they have it whiff that there was nudity, and there was not one picture. So if I peel that shit, they still haven't respond, man. I got a small channel. They're not gonna respond to it. I'm sitting in jail, so I'm off, man, because they're not even looking at me, man.
Chaos having peep shows over there. Stop acting like that, Chaos.
No.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all so much for joining us.
They crack down. They cracking down now. Yeah.
Yeah, like like you said, they got a channel that tells you what you can and cannot do on YouTube and all of this stuff. I look at
bullshit. Listen, they decided to weed out people. If we put out some real good stuff that's informative, depending on the content, they will weed you out. It doesn't matter.
Well, listen, y'all got to understand that is a thing that happens, okay? That is just the nature of the world, but we don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
Your content kind of pretty, like, and even especially like it's like, I'm still surprised that some channels have monetization, because they have really cracked down on censorship of a lot of different things.
Yeah, man.
After that lawsuit, what is it? They had that lawsuit. Yes, they have cracked down a lot. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot, folks. Well, thank you for having me, Topaz. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Chaos.
All right.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for you adding to the content. That was definitely helpful. Shout out to Big Duke coming through. His information was much needed, very helpful. He was up here also modeling what it looks like when you're overcoming it. So, the point that I wanted to drive home today is acknowledging that trauma is a thing and that is something that we need to fix. A, it can be fixed, and then B, life can be better after fixing it. I don't want it to be some, fog that everybody's afraid to tackle, afraid to challenge anymore. I
Yep.
want to demystify it so we can fight against it, and then we'll be able to get all of the things that we all say we want. Now, do we truly want them? Well, I'm trying to help out with the solution. So,
Yep. And
I
we're
don't ask for
with
much, but
that.
just watch the content. Just watch it. Even if you don't donate, just watch it, tell a friend, use it in daily life.
And share the stream.
Right. Like,
Uh,
share, subscribe.
yeah.
So we're gonna leave out on this musical note, this musical selection from Michael Jackson, and I feel like it definitely gives us something to look forward to after we heal all of the trauma. All right, thank y'all so much for coming in. Enjoy the selection, and I'll see y'all next time.
Later, guys.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, human nature,
Yeah, exactly, because we are human, right?
right?
Get back to that.
That's my.
It's just an apple. Then let me take a bite. If I say why, tell them that it's human nature.
Mm-mm. Don't do that.
Why? Tell them that it's human nature. Why? Does it do it that way? Reaching out, touch your street. Electric eyes are everywhere. That she knows I'm watching. She likes the way I stare. If they say bye, tell them that it's human nature. Do they do it that way? If they say bye, tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do it that way? I like living this way. I like loving this way. A city's heart begins to beat. Reaching out, I touch her shoulder. I'm dreaming of the street. If they say why, tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do it that way? If they say why, oh, tell them why does he do it that way? If they say why, shut up, just does he do it that way? If they say just why, Stella, does he do it that way? Why, oh, Stella, why does he do it that way?
Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming and enjoy the replay. See you
All right.
later.
Later, y'all.